Good morning, members and Mardia.
Morning, Petra.
Mardia, can I maybe just quickly check the sharing of the presentation because I'm going to drive it from this side.
Okay, Petra, I did actually send you a message to ask if I should make you the co-host or not. I will make you the co-host right now. As soon as
Okay.
the is done with the presentation.
Yeah, okay. But
Okay.
can I just quickly test it?
Okay, sure. I'll do it now.
Oh, yeah, I see your message. Hi. Is it all visible, Mardia?
It was a second ago, but now it's got that thing with the next slide next to it, with the preview next to it. The version you had on
Oh, yeah, I think it's because I'm using two monitors. Let me see if I do this and go back.
yeah, because the AJ also has to set up the presentation, eh?
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that that's fine, like that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, then you can take me off again. Thank you.
Okay.
Mardia, morning. Whilst we waiting for everybody to join in, could you just find out who Zoom user is? Right at the bottom.
Yes, Chi. In fact, they were one of the very first people to join the meeting. I sent a message much earlier asking them to just identify themselves. Let me just see, I think. Yeah, no, that person hasn't responded yet. I've actually asked them to identify themselves much earlier.
Okay, let's see if they do come back to us.
Honorable Chair, good morning.
Morning,
Mabilo, yeah. Good morning. Chair, I just request that Nadia must put next to my name the surname. It's just written Patrick. Patrick is not my surname, it's my name. I'm asking that they must include the surname Mabilo so that I don't get a problem when I'm supposed to join the meeting.
I've just changed it now, Mr. Mabilo.
Thank you, Madia. Thank you.
Honorable Mabilo, tell me something. I heard from Honorable Madisu that you weren't well. Are you okay now?
Yes, Chair, I was hospitalized for 6 days. I was discharged last week, Thursday. So,
Okay.
but I'm well now. I'm in Cape Town. I am well. I've recovered very well. Thanks, Chair, for the concern.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Hi, Chair.
You, my dear.
Hi, Chair. I've messaged Zoom user now twice to ask them to identify themselves, but they're not responding. Can you maybe formally ask them as Chair just to identify themselves before we start so that we can capture the name correctly?
Good morning to Zoom user. I see your profile pictures all dressed in red. Could you please identify yourself? Oh my word. Maybe it's, okay, there we are.
There we
An
go.
alternate for Honorable
Yes, okay.
Kennedy. All
Yes,
right.
yes. Okay, thanks. I will rename it. I will rename her now. Thank you so much, Ms. Nitsinga.
Colleagues, good morning. Madia, I see it's 10 o'clock.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Before we start with any presentations, I'd just like to determine whether we are call rate and whether the department's officials are here from both NDT and SAT.
Yes, Chair. We are creating, Chair. If I may, I can go through the list of members in attendance. In terms of the meeting today, we are first starting with the AGSA's briefing. The department and SAT is expected to join us at 11. We have invited them to form part of the briefing with the AG on the audit outcomes. Some of them will attend the first part of the meeting from 10 o'clock. However, they did already attend this briefing yesterday when it was made to the PC also. But if I may, if I can maybe just go through the members who are in attendance, Chair.
Thank you very much, Madia.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Chair, in attendance today, we have yourself, Honourable Kennedy, Honourable Palmer, Honourable Pina, Honourable Situli, Honourable Mabelo, Honourable van den Berg, Honourable Mtsinga. And then in terms of staff, we've also got Honourable Nangisa Nododa as well in attendance. And then in terms of staff, we've got our content advisors, Mr. Sishuba, Mr. Buskati, our researcher, Mr. Hanif, our committee assistant, Ms. Zimblani, and your executive secretary, Ms. Walters. I'm sure other colleagues will attend as we proceed with the meeting, but from a member's side, I haven't received any apologies, Chair. Oh, and there's one apology from our communications officer who's been hospitalized, so they weren't able to make it.
Oh dear. If I may ask, what's wrong with her or him?
She didn't indicate. She just said that she was hospitalized and was therefore unable to attend our meeting and submitted an apology. Yes.
All right. If you can just send her number to me, please. Colleagues, sorry for me not switching on my video. I've been in bed since Saturday with flu. I'm not feeling very well, but nevertheless, we'll carry on. I would just like to say thank you very much for everybody availing themselves for this meeting. And with
recording in progress.
With reference to SAT and NDT, we'll address that issue after we've had the presentation by the AG. If the AG could just give us an indication on who will be taking us through the presentation, and also then again just introduce themselves, because we unfortunately tend to forget who is who when we have these meetings, because we don't meet on a regular basis. So in the essence of time, can I please just hand over to the AG if she is here, or the person who will be standing in for the presentation. And Madia, I don't know if you are doing the flighting or whether they will be doing the flighting.
Yes, we've given co-hosting rights to the AG's office, Chief, so they will be flighting from their side.
Okay, super. Honourable AG, if you are present and if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair. Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable members, Honourable all the committee members, staff, the people from the Auditor-General. Honourable Chair, I also want to share my your speedy recovery. I just hope for your speedy recovery as well. Your voice as well. I can hear it. It's not, you're not feeling good. Hoping for your speedy recovery. Honourable Chair, my name is Nompakamo Matanzima. I am the business unit leader that oversee on the audit of the tourism portfolio. With me today, I've got the deputy business unit leader, who can just show in the camera, Nicholas Mukwena, who is the deputy business leader for the tourism portfolio. I also have Sipesihle Mlangeni, who will be leading the presentation today, who is also the Audit Senior Manager in charge of the tourism portfolio, both the department as well as the entity. But with your permission, Chair, before I can hand over to our lead person, Sipesihle Mlangeni, I do want us to highlight as well that the portfolio, the tourism portfolio, it is quite a critical portfolio because of the role it plays in terms of the SA economy, in harnessing the growth of the economy, and also assisting in the job creation and its contribution as well to the gross domestic product, which is the GDP of the country. So it is quite important and role. So we will be reflecting today on how this portfolio has achieved, how they achieved on their midterm key targets, as well as their annual performance targets. And this is also aligned with our audit strategy, Honorable Chair, which is the Culture Shift 2030 audit strategy, which really seeks to achieve our aspiration of shifting the public sector culture in a culture that really characterized by performance, characterized by accountability, integrity, as well as transparency, all with the aim of ensuring that our citizens, the lived experiences of our citizens, are improved. And as well, Honorable Chair, I do want to highlight as well the other key important entity, which is the South African tourism. This entity, because of its mandate of marketing the South Africa as the domestic and international preferred tourist destination. So its stability is quite important at a board level. So we will be elevating some of the insights relating to that, so that this entity, the stability of the board, will be able now to make sure that there is a focus in the fulfillment of that mandate by the entity. We also are going to be reflecting, Honorable Chair and the honorable members, on where the department has embarked on the infrastructure development programs. And these infrastructure development programs, it's aiming at promoting the inclusive growth. It's also creating the jobs, and most importantly, to preserve our cultural tourist sites and also promote the domestic tourist. We will be reflecting on those projects, Honorable Chair, and how they are tracking in terms of their delivery. With your permission, Honorable Chair, I will now hand over to Sipesihle Mlangeni, who will be taking us through the detailed presentation on the audit outcomes for the 2023-2024 tourism portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Matanzima. Over to you, Mr. Mlangeni.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and other officials from the National Department of Tourism and South African Tourism that have joined us on this call. Honorable Chairperson, I will switch off my camera so that the colleagues can be able to then see the presentation. If you can go to the next slide, please. Honorable Chairperson, the mission of the Auditor-General is to audit public entities and departments, and in so doing, enable oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector. And our vision, Honorable Chairperson, is to be recognized by all stakeholders as a relevant supreme audit institution that enhances public sector accountability. Honorable Chairperson, the slide that is presented at the moment is reflecting the accountability ecosystem, which reflects a network of key stakeholders that have an important role to play to ensure that government is able to execute on its mandate. On the left-hand side, we have leadership and decision makers that are responsible for day-to-day activities in the fulfillment of the program of government. And then on the right-hand side, we have support and oversight structures, which includes all of the parliamentary oversight committees, including portfolio committees, select committees, and joint committees that have an important role to ensure that the departments and entities overseen and that they are able to perform as they ought to be performing And in the process of performing, they do so in a manner that complies with the laws and regulations that are applicable, and that there is proper usage of funds that have been allocated to those departments. Can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chairperson, in terms of the portfolio for tourism, we have two auditees, the National Department of Tourism, responsible for policy implementation of tourism-related policies of government, as well as South African Tourism, which has a mandate to market South Africa as a domestic and international preferred tourist destination, market South Africa as a destination for business events through its National Conventions Bureau business unit within South African Tourism, and implement and manage the national grading system for tourism through the National Grading Council of South Africa that also sits within South African Tourism. Next slide. Honorable Chairperson, in the prior year, we had made recommendations to the Executive Authority, the Honorable Minister, to address the findings that had been reported in the previous year, including other insights relating to performance. We had a recommendation relating to overseeing the progress in the adequate development and implementation of root cause focused audit action plans to improve the outcomes of the tourism portfolio. So in terms of the progress that has been made, Honorable Chair, is that the National Department of Tourism did improve in terms of audit outcomes from unqualified with findings to a clean audit outcomes. So, Honorable Chair, this means that National Department of Tourism did not have material misstatements in its financial statements. There were no material findings in its annual performance report. So it means that the annual performance report was both useful and reliable, and there were no material instances of non-compliance that were reported at National Department of Tourism. However, Honorable Chairperson, in terms of the audit outcome for South African tourism, we observed a regression with the entity regressing from an unqualified opinion with findings to a qualified opinion with findings. So a qualified opinion, Honorable Chairperson, means that there were areas in the financial statements where there were significant errors or misstatements that were not corrected in the financial statements. We also had material instances of non-compliance in the report for South African tourism. So the progress, therefore, for this action plan remains as in progress due to the regression at South African tourism, notwithstanding the fact that there was an improvement at the National Department of Tourism. The second recommendation related to the appointment of the Board of South African Tourism and some key positions in the senior management level at South African Tourism. Honorable Chairperson, South African Tourism had an instability at board level, with the significant portion of the 23-24 financial year having been overseen by an interim board. We did note that in February of 2024, the Board of South African Tourism was then appointed, and then some of the senior management position were also filled subsequent to the appointment of the board. We have, however, noted that some of the board members have since resigned and some senior management position remains vacant. Therefore, the progress insofar as that commitment remains as in progress. The third recommendation, Honorable Chair, relates to the monitoring of the achievement of target at SA Tourism, which had achieved only 54% of targets in the 22-23 financial year. We did note some improvement in terms of the percentage achievement of targets, with the target percentage being at 78% in the 23-24 financial year. It remains in progress, as the desired state is that SA Tourism should then be able to achieve 100% of its target. You can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, in terms of the audit outcomes over the sixth administration, we started the administration term with both National Department of Tourism and South African Tourism having audit outcomes in the unqualified with findings category. And that was the case even in the 22-23 financial year. In this financial year, being 23-24, we observed an improvement at National Department of Tourism and a regression at South African Tourism. This is a regression, Honorable Chair, because it means that in the portfolio there is an auditee that has financial statements that lack credibility. In terms of the areas that led to the financial statements of South African Tourism being qualified, it was the area of marketing expenditure. So marketing expenditure, Honorable Chair, relates to the expenses for the core mandate of South African Tourism. It relates to activations and brand-related expenses. What we observed is that there were discrepancies in terms of what the entity had recorded in its financial information when compared to the invoices. So the entity was using purchase orders to recognize expenditure while they were awaiting for invoices. And when invoices were received, there were no reconciliation to align the invoices to what had been recorded in the financial system. That also had an impact in terms of the recording of payables from exchange transactions. We also noted that due to lack of regular reconciliations of payables from exchange transactions, there were still material discrepancies in the in the payables from exchange transactions at year end. For cash and cash equivalents, Honorable Chair, we noted that there were no reconciliations that were performed on a regular basis, noting that the Treasury regulation required that reconciliations be performed on a weekly basis. And those reconciliations not being performed led to discrepancies that were significant between what had been recorded in the financial records of the entity and what the bank statements were reflecting. For cash generated from operations, Honorable Chair, there were also multiple errors in the calculations for that line item. This was due to lack of adequate review of schedules that supports the statement of cash flow. In terms of compliance with applicable legislation, we had two instances of material non-compliance, Honorable Chair. The first relates to the quality of submitted annual financial statements, which is linked to the qualified opinion. The second material non-compliance was reported under the area of expenditure management, which is directly attributable to irregular expenditure, which increased to 24.2 million in the 23-24 financial year. Can move on to the next slide. So in terms of our assessment of the culture in the portfolio, Honorable Chair, from a performance perspective, we noted that National Department of Tourism achieved 93% of its targets, which is a significant achievement, and it is something that needs to be commended, although the desired state would be for the department to achieve all of its targets. At South African Tourism, the entity achieved 78%, although there was an improvement from the previous year. There is still an opportunity to improve from a performance perspective. Again, the desired state is for the entity to achieve all of its targets. The key target that was not achieved in terms of SA Tourism was the target relating to grading of tourism establishments. From an accountability perspective, we noted that National Department of Tourism complied with all key legislation, hence we did not report material instances of non-compliance at the department. However, there was a significant increase in terms of irregular expenditure at South African Tourism, and there were material instances of non-compliance reported at entity. From a transparency perspective, the annual financial statements submitted by NDT did not contain any material misstatements. The annual performance report for both NDT and SA Tourism also did not contain any material misstatements. The annual performance report for both NDT and SAD were useful and reliable. However, when it comes to the quality of financial statements of SA Tourism, as highlighted earlier on, there were significant issues that were identified, resulting in material misstatements and the outcome therefore being a qualified opinion. In terms of institutional integrity, the culture at National Department of Tourism is characterized by ethical leadership and consequence management. However, at South African Tourism, there is lack of institutional integrity as evidenced by material instances of non-compliance and significant increase in both irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Honorable Chairperson, also a material irregularity was identified relating to payments for services that were not rendered at SA Tourism. These relate to the additional powers, Honorable Chair, that were given to the Auditor-General to issue a material irregularity notification in instances where a material irregularity has been identified. So that has been applied in the case of South African tourism insofar as payments for services not rendered is concerned. In terms of good practices for attaining good administration at the National Department of Tourism, we attribute it to stability in leadership and governance structures that are in place, the leadership tone that drives ethical culture and integrity, as well as accountability. We also attribute it to sound financial and performance management discipline. With South African tourism, what led to the regression in the audit outcomes is the vacancies, particularly those that are in the finance division, the instability in key positions at senior management level, as well as the instability at board level. We also noted slow response by the accounting authority to implement recommendations for improving the audit outcomes and inadequate financial management discipline that is in place, including regular reconciliations that ought to be taking place, cash and cash equivalents, and payables from exchange transactions. There's also inadequate oversight and monitoring of compliance with key legislation by the accounting authority. So, Honorable Chair, our recommendations is that at SAT, the accounting authority would need to prioritize the filling of key vacant positions, including key vacant positions in the finance division. And there's also other key positions at senior management level. But I just want to highlight the vacant position also of the chief audit executive, which is the official that will be leading the internal audit division. The internal audit division being the first level of assurance that should, on a regular basis, provide assurance to management that all checks and balances are in place, all financial controls are operating as they ought to be. In terms of improving the existing financial management and supply chain management, there is a need for that to be enhanced, particularly as it relates to the review of existing policies, to improve them and ensure that the policies do compel that the regular reconciliations are performed and that the procurement plans include all the activities that ought to be included so that when it comes to planning for procurement activities, SAT is then in a position to have sufficient time to plan for those procurement activities and avoid deviating from competitive bidding processes. The executive authority should address the instability at board level at SA Tourism because the executive authority ultimately is the party that's responsible for appointment of board members. And this will also assist with stabilizing board committees to ensure that they are functional and can discharge their responsibility of oversight. And then lastly, the executive authority should also monitor the implementation of the planned actions to address the material irregularity that we issued to a South African Tourism Accounting Authority. You can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, I have provided an overview in terms of the financial controls of the portfolio, with those that relate to National Department of Tourism being assessed as good, as the department did not have any material misstatements in the financial statements, and those of South African Tourism being reflected as intervention required because ultimately those controls were lacking, and that's how the entity ended up with a qualified opinion. I've spoken to the main qualification areas, therefore I'll move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, in terms of performance planning and reporting, what we have noted is that the quality of performance reports for both entity and SAT were of the right quality. When we audited the performance information, we were able to obtain evidence that supports what has been reported as achievements, and when we assessed the indicators that were included in the annual performance plan and assessed in the annual performance report, we were able to conclude that the indicators were useful and reliable, and there were no instances where indicators that ought to have been included in the annual performance plan were omitted. If you can move on to the next slide. So in terms of performance against target, there were key targets that were included in the medium-term strategic framework in the portfolio. The MTSF framework, Honorable Chair, was the second phase leading up to the 2030 NDP targets, with the first phase having been the 2014 to the 2019 MTSF. Now, the MTSF that we just concluded, the MTSF period that we just concluded, is the second of the third segment that is part of the National Development Plan. So in terms of the key targets that were elevated to the medium-term strategic framework for the portfolio, we had international tourist arrival, and our observation is that the 5-year target had been exceeded. The target had been set at 10.3 million tourists for the 5-year period, and the achievement was 19.26 million. Honorable Chair, this then means that the portfolio was able to market South Africa as a tourist destination, and we were able to attract more tourists than we had planned, and this would have a positive impact in terms of the gross domestic product and the creation of jobs, particularly in the tourism sector, which is a labor-intensive sector. The second target is a target relating to total tourist foreign direct spend. This relates to spending on tourism products by foreign tourists, and the target had been set at 86.7 billion. And achievement was 203.8 billion. This is commendable, Honorable Chair, and again, it contributes positively to the economy and job creation. The third target is the domestic holiday trips, where we also noted that the target had been exceeded, with the target being set at 10.8 million trips and achievement being 30.2 million trips. Again, there's a positive impact on the economy and on job creation. Honorable Chair, you would recall that with COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021, the tourism sector was intentional in ensuring that at least they motivate South Africans to travel within the country. And we are seeing the fruits of those initiatives and those programs with the number of South Africans that have traveled within the country during the last 5 years, as evident by the domestic holiday trips outcome of 30.2 million trips when compared to the target of 10.8 million trips. Honorable Chair, when we look at the annual performance report in terms of targets for 23-24 and those that were not achieved, for SA Tourism, we noted that the target for number of graded establishments was not fully achieved. And the reason for that was that the tourism grading support program was only renewed in December. And this then therefore means that the entity could only implement the program for a period of 4 months. The second target relates to percentage implementation of valid internal and external audit recommendations, where there were still outstanding findings that were not concluded due to challenges in the human capital, supply chain management, governance, risk, and compliance business units. And then the last target is a target relating to National Department of Tourism for making payments within the prescribed time frame, which is 30 days. There were invoices and supporting documents that were not submitted to finance on time. Now, the impact of these targets being underachieved is that from a grading of tourism perspective, it could negatively affect the domestic and international tourist experience when it comes to their usage of the tourism establishments. This is because this target relates to the grading of establishments from 5-star, 4-star, and so on and so on. The underachievement of targets relating to addressing of audit recommendations has resulted in a regression in audit outcomes that we have spoken about earlier on, Honorable Chair. And then the underachievement of percentage of invoices paid within 30 days could result in interest being levied by suppliers. and which can also result in fruitless and wasteful expenditure and non-compliance with trade regulations. We can move on to the next slide. So from a compliance perspective, we had material non-compliance reported at SA Tourism under the area of quality of financial statements and prevention of irregular expenditure. No instances of material non-compliance were reported at National Department of Tourism. Next slide. Honorable Chair, this slide then reflects the annual irregular expenditure incurred in the tourism portfolio, noting that in the 23-24 financial year, in aggregate, irregular expenditure of 25 million was incurred, with SA Tourism contributing 24.2 of the 25 million. We also then categorize the irregular expenditure incurred in terms of how the pillars of procurement that are enshrined in the Constitution, looking at constitutional provisions of a competitive procurement process, an equitable procurement process that is also transparent and cost-effective. What we have observed is that the majority of the instances of irregular expenditure were due to the breach of the pillar of competition. At South African Tourism, 9.9 million was paid for services that were not in the scope of the contract. Now, Honorable Chair, this means that what ought to have occurred is that SA Tourism ought to have followed a separate competitive bidding process rather than using an existing contract to procure for services. 7.4 million was incurred for facilitation of rides during a rugby event, 3.8 million for a golf event, 2.5 million paid for a rugby association. So in all these instances, the entity ought to have followed a competitive bidding process and obtained the necessary approvals to ensure that competitive bidding processes and supply chain management prescript are followed as required by law. At National Department of Tourism, 773,000 was incurred under a contract for security, which was awarded in 2021. And due to this being a multi-year contract, in each and every subsequent year, this expenditure continues to be recognized or to be disclosed as irregular because the contract was still active. For comparative information, we've also reflected on this on the slide in terms of the pillars that we breached in the previous year in terms of the irregular expenditure incurred. And again, it is observable that the pillar of competition is the pillar that was breached even in the previous year. We can move on to the slide. So in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Honorable Chair, we've provided a similar analysis looking at the past 5 years. And as can be seen on screen, there has been a significant increase in terms of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, with SA Tourism contributing 4.2 million of the 4.25 million aggregate fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Of the 4.2 million fruitless and wasteful expenditure reported at SA Tourism, 4.1 relate to expenditure incurred on services that were not rendered, which relates to the material irregularity that was issued to the accounting authority in July of 2024. We have also provided comparative information on interest and penalties that were incurred that led to fruitless and wasteful expenditure and other instances of fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the previous year. Next slide. So in terms of consequence management and how irregular expenditure has been dealt with in the previous 5 years, Honorable Chair, the aggregate irregular expenditure as at the end of 23-24, which is March 2024, stood at 89.5 million. And of that, 86 million relate to SA Tourism. We have also reflected that some of this irregular expenditure has been investigated and is awaiting condonment. 3.5 million of that, which is for National Department of Tourism, has already been investigated and is awaiting condonation. 61.8 million relates to SAT, that is awaiting condonation. And then irregular expenditure of 9.9 is still under investigation for SAT. and then 14.3 million of that is yet to be investigated as at the end of the audit. You can move on to the next slide. Similarly, with fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Honorable Chair, we have provided an analysis of how fruitless and wasteful expenditure has been dealt with. As can be noted on screen, 201 million aggregate fruitless and wasteful expenditure was the cumulative balance as at the end of 23-24. Important to note is that 195 million or 194.8 million of that relates to fruitless and wasteful expenditure reported at National Department of Tourism due to projects, infrastructure projects that were stalled as reported in the 2018-19 and 19-20 financial year. This fruitless and wasteful expenditure has been subjected to an investigation. Consequence management has been instituted. However, recovery process is delayed by legal processes that are still underway. Important to note, Honorable Chair, is that there's 5.4 million of fruitless and wasteful expenditure that is yet to be investigated, and that relates to SA tourism. This is the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that would require urgent attention. If you can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, in terms of leadership stability at National Department of Tourism, there has been stability in terms of leadership, and that is attributable to the clean audit outcome, or we attribute the clean audit outcome to leadership stability and the high percentage of performance targets that were achieved. However, Honorable Chair, we just want to make a recommendation insofar as the department is concerned around its role in overseeing SA tourism. As reported, entity received a clean audit. However, if the department is receiving a clean audit and its entity site is not receiving a similar outcome, it therefore means that there is more work that the department needs to do through its accounting officer to enhance oversight over SA tourism, to ultimately ensure that SA tourism improves when it comes to performance, accountability, transparency, and institutional integrity. At SA tourism, there has been challenges around the instability at board and senior management level. At the beginning of the financial year, we had an interim board which comprised of 3 members, and they oversaw the governance of the public entity until the 28th of February, when the full board was appointed. We've also seen some vacancies at senior management level, including the positions of the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Conventions Bureau Officer, Chief Strategy Officer, and Head of Internal Audit. I did speak to this vacancy earlier on, as well as the position of Company Secretary, which were occupied by acting incumbent for an extended period of time during the 23-24 financial year. The Finance Division also experienced some instability during the financial year, which then also contributed to the regression in audit outcomes. We have noted that some of the positions, including the position of the Company Secretary, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Strategy Officer, were filled in March of 2024. So therefore, our recommendation, Honorable Chair, is that the Accounting Authority would need to fill the remaining vacant positions, and that the Executive Authority would need to address the recent instability that has been observed in the South African Tourism Board with the recent resignations that has been reported. If we can move on to the next slide. In terms of material irregularity, Honorable Chair, this relates to the enforcement powers that were given by Parliament to the Auditor-General to issue material irregularity notifications and assess how the auditees are dealing with those to ensure that money ultimately is recovered and that the system of internal controls is improved to prevent the incurrence of further losses, and that there's consequence management where required. So the financial loss that was reported in relation to the material irregularity at SA Tourism is a financial loss of 4.1 million rands. So SA Tourism made an upfront payment to one of their suppliers to perform certain activities relating to the Dubai Expo, which was meant to happen at the end of 2021. And the Dubai Expo did occur. However, the activities that were associated with the payments were not undertaken. Therefore, what ought to have occurred is that SA Tourism was supposed to recover that upfront payment. Also, what is important to note, Honorable Chair, is that even the payment of that upfront, the making of the upfront payment was not in accordance with the Treasury regulation, because the specific contract under which the payment was made did not have specific stipulations allowing for prepayments to be made. So we issued this material irregularity notification on the 3rd of July, and the accounting authority responded with proposed actions, which included instituting an investigation into the circumstances that led to the financial loss, and based on the outcome of the investigation, implement consequence management. The accounting authority also committed to suspend the contract in which the loss was incurred and recover the financial loss. And also they committed to improve the control environment, including reviewing processes relating to making of prepayments and validation of expenditure, whether it has been incurred or not. So, Honorable Chair, we will then follow up with the accounting authority in the next audit in terms of how they've implemented those planned actions. Our recommendation to the Select Committee as an oversight structure is that the Select Committee should monitor the implementation of the planned action, which are geared towards strengthening the control environment, the recovery of the financial loss that has been suffered, as well as the implementation of consequence management where appropriate. You can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, the Department of Tourism has a number of projects across the country which are being implemented to promote the tourism sector and also to create jobs. We selected 17 projects during the 23-24 financial year, and based on the observations from the audit is that there is quite a number of projects that are behind in terms of progress when compared to the original targeted plans for the completion of those projects. Some are behind by 12 months, as in the case of Mkambeni Community Center. Some are a month behind, which means that there's still an opportunity to catch up. And our insight insofar as this is concerned is that it is critical that the accounting officer, working with the agency that is implementing this project, puts a plan in place and enhance oversight over the implementation of this project to ensure that these projects ultimately are implemented and then can be completed in time, so that the beneficiaries of this project across the country can then derive benefit from this project, and that these projects can then contribute positively in the tourism industry, in the creation of jobs, and ultimately in the economy. You can move on to the next slide. This slide, Honorable Chair, reflects on the root causes and the impact of the delays in the implementation of this project. So the root causes that we have identified relate to ineffective consultation and coordination with all relevant stakeholders, such as local and tribal authorities and local communities. In most instances, Honorable Chair, you find that there are disruptions that are observed in this project, which can be attributable to ineffective or lack of consultation with the relevant stakeholders, where you find that the community has a different expectation in terms of what the project needs to deliver, or there are challenges with regards to changes in tribal authorities, where a chief that would have been part of the initiation of the discussions around the implementation of the project would have changed, and a new chief would then have a different view in terms of how the process needs to unfold. There were challenges regarding ineffective oversight and monitoring of controls between entity and the implementing agent. We also noted ineffective contract management, where some of the professional service providers who are also called consulted were over allocated to some of this project, which then create a risk for the project, because if you have one person doing a number of projects, the risk of project failure increases if there are resource constraints from that specific service provider. There were instances where there was a lack of conditional assessment to establish the extent of work that needed to be done. So you'll find that as the project unfolds, there is a recognition that the initial assessment may have not included all the facts that needed to be considered in the execution of the project. So the impact that can be attributed to the delays in this project is that the communities or the beneficiaries that ought to benefit may not benefit by the time that had been set at the beginning. So there will be delays in them deriving the benefit. There will be a delay in job creation, and the ultimate benefit on the economy would also be delayed. Can move on to the next slide. Honorable Chair, in terms of the summary of root causes and recommendations, I had specifically reflected on them as I was presenting in the various sections of the presentation. I'm not going to go into detail, but what I want to focus on is the next slide that talks to the message to the Select Committee. So our message to the Select Committee is that we request the Select Committee to monitor and regularly follow up with the Executive Authority and the Accounting Officer of the National Department of Tourism and the Accounting Authority of SA Tourism on these matters. The first one is the implementation of root cause focused audit action plan and the implementation of preventative controls to address instances of non-compliance with supply chain management prescript. In the previous year, there was an action plan submitted by the National Department of Tourism and SA Tourism. In the case of SA Tourism, because there were repeat findings and there were also new findings that led to the regression in audit outcomes, our view was that then the action plan was not effective in timelessly dealing with those issues. Therefore, the implementation of a root cause focused audit action plan would be critical, and that the Select Committee would need to monitor the implementation of that. When it comes to the filling of key vacant positions, specifically at SAT and the stabilization of the board, the Select Committee will also need to monitor developments insofar as that matter is concerned. Enhancement of oversight over the implementation of infrastructure project. As highlighted when I was presenting the slide on infrastructure projects, there is a need to enhance oversight over the implementation of those projects, and the Select Committee would also need to monitor and regularly follow up on those enhancements. In terms of the implementation of planned actions by the Accounting Authority to address the material irregularity, the Select Committee would need to follow up on those matters to get a status update on where the progress on investigation is, whether or not money has been recovered, and how the entity has improved the control environment to ensure that that matter does not recur in the future. And lastly, Honorable Chair, the committee would need to monitor and follow up on the enhancement of oversight on SA Tourism by the Accounting Officer of the Department to improve SA Tourism's performance, accountability, transparency, and institutional integrity. This, Chair, then brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Mr. Malangeni, thank you very much, and to Ms. Matanzima as well. You have given us food for thought. It is clear that SAT is definitely in need of, if I can call it, a complete overhaul. I know that the minister is now busy with the board and so forth, but tourism is a growth generator, and as Ms. Matanzima said, contribution to growth in the GDP is essential, and tourism is one of the departments that can contribute to it. And she also alluded to the fact of a shift in the culture. And this is something that we have spoken about in the 7th administration, myself and my sister committee chairperson, that there's got to be a shift of culture, and we will most definitely ensure that performance and accountability with regard to both these the department and its entity are looked at. I am absolutely devastated with what is going on at SAT and the amount of irregular expenditure, and it is something that this committee will have to take over and ensure that oversight is done on a regular basis. In view of that, members, honourable members, as I said, the AG has given us food for thought. They've given us a lot of information that we can interrogate both the NDT and the SAT on. But the floor is now open for questions and answers. And just remember, the AG is here to answer clarity-seeking questions. We are meeting with the department and SAT after the AG, and you can then interrogate them as much as you like. So if there are any clarity-seeking questions from the AG, I would just like to ask people to put up their hands so that I and Madia can have a look, and we can then ask questions from the AG. Once again, thank you for the presentation. It eases our work and gives us a lot that we can work with. Thank you. All right. I'm going to work from the top down. I only see, now I see 3 hands. Honourable Pinaar, followed by Honourable Vandenberg, and then Honourable Modise. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you for the session, and yes, I also wish you speedy recovery. We hope to see you in good health on campus very soon again. Madam Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation, DG, Auditor-General. We greatly appreciate that. I've got 3 questions, 2 questions, and one just seeking question that I want to raise. You mentioned in one of your slides the resignations in September of board members and senior management individuals, but you did not specify how many took place there. And a follow-up question on that, do you have access to the reasons for these resignations? Because a lot of the time, Madam Chairperson, you can get to the root cause that the presentation spoke to by knowing why people are resigning. And I'm very sure that would be a very interesting read or knowledge to have as to why we have senior management and board members resigning. Is it because of conflict? Is it because of decisions being taken that's maybe unethical and they cannot agree to it, and they resign based on principle? So I would love to know from the representative why are these people resigning, and if he has knowledge as to why they are resigning, the reasons for resignations. The second question is a clarifying seeking question, Madam Chairperson. So you spoke with regards to 7.4 million for the facilitation of rights during a rugby event. Now, I want to just get clarity from you in regards to the wording of that sentence. Was this for facilitating, just for facilitating the process, or was it for actually getting the rights of the rugby game? Because those are 2 completely different things. So was it for the person facilitating the process or actually getting the rights? You can just clarify that for me. And then I have to note, Madam Chairperson, that obviously I think, and you said it well yourself, that the big crisis here is at South African tourism and not at the National Department of Tourism. The SAT is the big issue, because it's obviously being red flagged all over the place. Yes, there are concerns at the NDT, but the SAT is the major one. I think we should focus on the most or interrogate the most. And with that being said, Chairperson, it's also very concerning for me that according to the report we just received, 0 investigations has been instituted and 0 disciplinary processes has been completed or is in the process. So clearly there's no accountability or consequent management taking place at SAT. And that is just a personal concern I have. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Pienaar. Honourable van den Berg.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. And yes, I also hope you feel better, you recover well. What I was thinking, the representative from the AG told us about an action plan that was not effective. Was that a recovery action plan, or is it the departmental action plan that stipulates all the different activities that they will be taking part in? I'm referring to SAT. Why I'm asking that is this department, SA Tourism, has to repair they have to repair their relationship to this committee. We have to reach a point of mutual trust and working together again, and therefore we have to push the point. We have to ask them. They have to bring to the table their action plan as to how they will repair this this problem that we are facing with them right now. So I just need to make sure this action plan that was not effective, was it a distressed one, or is it the departmental action plan that you referred to? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable van den Berg. Honourable Modise.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to honourable members and colleagues. Chair, my difficulty, I'm here at Acacia Park. We do gardening, so it's machines all over. If it disturbed anyone, I apologize in advance. Chair, one is a question and one is a comment, and let me start with the comment. And I have the fact that the office of the every time you send a request for them to come, they always and assist us in our understanding of what's happening in the department, so that our armed with information.
Honourable Modise, I'm sorry, we're losing you from time to time. Is there any way that you can shift, because we catch one word and then we lose the next 2 words?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. Please tell me if you can hear me loud and clear so that I can stand where you can hear me. I'm trying to move around. Or rather, let me write on.
We can hear you now. Try again.
Okay. I was saying, firstly, let me appreciate the office of the AG, that every time you send an invite to them, they're always available to come and assist us in understanding what is it that is happening in the departments, because it's easy to get report from departments, which is not necessarily what's taking place on the ground, or a true reflection of what is happening. But my question, Chair, is that is there anything from the AG's office that they believe that through the committee led by yourself, if we could focus on specifically on one thing or 2 things that they believe, if as the portfolio committee were to focus on them, will also assist them as the office of the AG in terms of always flagging certain issues in the department, and they keep on coming back. They flag them, they keep on coming back. And probably it's something that we can also help them as the office of the AG, that they're able to move. So for argument's sake, if they flagged 10 problems within the department, and next time they flag issues, instead of problems being 2 or 3 and 7 have been attended to, now they've added another 5. Now they've got 15 problems. So if there is anything that they believe, if they were to say to us, if you could focus on these 2 issues, at least next time we go back to the department, instead of having extra 3, we now sit with -6 of the issue back to the department. I'm not sure if you got that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Modise. We did get it. Honourable Mabilu.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions to the AG. One is that in terms of the percentage of targets set out by SAT, the AG's office reported that they only met 54% thereof. The question then arises, the targets as set out, are they based on SMART principles? Or are they just mere compliance in terms of ticking the boxes? Because if your target is 100% and you meet 54%, that's wholly inadequate. So I just want to check in terms of the AG's office, how then do you rate those targets that are not met? Second one will relate to the management report. Obviously, we know that after the interface between your office and the department, SAT, there will be a management report. So the question that arises from my side is that in terms of all the weaknesses that you have highlighted, what in a summary does their management report respond to those challenges? Lastly, around the maladministration and reckless and careless conduct, that's how I would characterize that, where you have reported more than once that there were payments effected while goods and services were not carried or delivered. Then what I don't get is what explanation is given by the accounting officers and the team for that kind of a malpractice. No services, no goods, but payment is done. What explanation are they giving? This is a question that I will also follow up with them. I just want to check, is it plausible or not? Thanks, Chair. Those were my brief questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mabilo. Honourable van der Berg, is that a legacy hand, or have you got another question?
Sorry, legacy, I'll take it off.
Okay, thank you very much. To the two presenters, it is clear that the members have also picked up on how problematic SAT is, and the fact that your presentation has enriched them with regard to being able to engage and interrogate them. So once again, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to whoever is going to answer the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair, and also to the honourable members for your questions. I will first respond to the questions, and I will also allow the other team members from the Auditor-General to also augment where I could not address properly. The very first question, Honourable Chair and honourable members, was from Honourable Pinar relating to the resignations in September 2024. Honourable Pinar, the resignations were relating to some of the board members, and the key ones of the resignation was the resignation of the chair of the board, as well as the deputy chair, and the senior manager that as well, that was also resigned, was key there, was the CFO. And then in terms of if we have any access to the reasons of the resignations, we did have an engagement with the Honourable Minister on.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Can you hear me?
I don't know if it's on my side, but
maybe
I can't hear you, Honourable Matazima. Can everybody else hear her? I just want to determine if it's on my side or.
I can hear, Madam Chairperson.
I can hear as well, Chair. I can hear everything.
Okay, thank you. Then it's on my side.
We can hear that she's audible. Yeah.
Sorry, AG, for interrupting. Please carry on.
Maybe must I switch on the video to save the bandwidth? Maybe you'll be able to hear me, Honorable Chair.
I can hear you now. I've just moved from my position,
right.
so that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. So what I was saying in terms of whether we have access to the reasons of the recent resignations, we did have an engagement with the Honorable Minister, and he did take us through on some of the key reasons of the resignations, which were mainly relating to some of the activities relating, I think, to the payment of the board fees. But Honorable Minister maybe will be able to expand on that, I think, as part of the department's engagement. And then in terms of the third question relating to Honorable Pinar, of the 7.4 million, that 7.4 million, Honorable Pinar, was relating to obtain the actual rights to advertise in that event, in the rugby event. So it's obtaining the actual rights. From the question of Honorable Van der Berg relating to the action plan, Honorable Van der Berg, after each and every at the end of each and audit process, and I think Honorable Mabilo talked about the management report. So we normally issue a management report that outlines all the areas that we have found during the audit process that require attention of management in terms of improving the control environment of either the department or the entity. And that management report, they normally go and do what we call a root cause action plan. So that's the action plan that we are referring to. In this case, as you can see, for South African tourism, there's areas of qualifications that we found deficiencies on. They will go and do an action plan, and that action plan, as the Auditor General, as part of the value add, we review it to ensure that whatever the actions or remedial actions that are put in that deficiency, they are addressing what we found. So it is part of the process for the Auditor General to review that action plan, and that action plan then gets monitored by the department. They've got structures in place internally, and also as well as the entity to monitor it on the implementation, as well as the audit committee and the board as well. They do look at those action plans and monitor, and subsequently that provision and that update is also on a quarterly basis tabled to Parliament on how far are they in addressing the audit findings of the Auditor General. So it is one of those. Hence, we are saying it is not effective because the entity, irrespective, although there was an action plan, that action plan actually did not address, because now the South African tourism entity now has regressed in terms of the audit outcomes. From Honorable Modise, in terms of what are the key things that you want, you would ask us for the committee to focus on. I think the key ones, Honorable, I think on the last slides that we've put in terms of our presentation, which is slide 23, I think we've put 5 things, but I think you want 3 things. So we've put 5 things that the committee must focus on. One is things relating to the question of Honorable Van der Berg in terms of the implementation, the monitoring of that audit action plan to ensure that our findings relating to the compliance, relating to the performance information, relating to the financial statements are being addressed throughout. So that is number one. And the key one that is quite important is the filling of the key vacant positions in terms of South African tourism, and to stabilize the board. Because if we fill the board position, then there's stability. Then the board, including their committees, which is the audit committee, will be able to track the performance of the entities, the performance as well as this audit action plan. So filling of these key, and also fill the vacancies of the key senior managers that are currently vacant, because they are currently being occupied by acting incumbents. So that's quite key. And the most important one as well, in terms of the material irregularity, I think Honorable Mabilo talk about where there was a payments that were made, but where the services were not rendered. So hence we've raised what we call a material irregularity, whereas the Auditor General, during the audit process, we identify a non-compliance with the key legislation, and that non-compliance resulted to the financial loss, of which in this case, there was a financial loss of 4.1 million, where the payment was made for a dome structure that was not used, and therefore that money should have been paid back to the entity, but it was not done. So that the recovery of that money is key. So So the committee can also ensure that they follow that the process in terms of that recovery process, and the investigation related to that are also tracked on. And the most important one, of course, is the implementation of these infrastructure projects, to make sure that the monitoring and oversight on those implementation, to ensure that they are delivered on time, at a right quality, and efficiently and effectively. So those are the key areas that I can request the committee to be their focus, to ensure the clean administration and ultimately the service delivery in this portfolio. And then Honorable Mabilo, in terms of the targets met at 54%, I think that was relating to our previous recommendations in the previous year. I think that was slide, I just want to go through to the slide. It was in slide 5, where in the previous year, the South African tourism only achieved 54%. So we raised concern relating to the low achievement of their key targets. So in the current year, that percentage has moved from 54% to 74%. It's still not 100%, but there is an improvement. So yes, the targets in the current year were smart, as we identified as well in slide 9, where we're saying the quality of the performance reports for both the department as well as the entity were useful and they were reliable. We did not identify any significant material errors on them. So they met the SMART principle. So I can confirm that. And then from Honorable, I think Mabilo as well, in terms of the management weaknesses and highlighted response to, I think I've already spoken about the management report. Once the management report, and then there's an action plan. I think I've covered that. In terms of the maladministration reported, I think when we issued the relating to the payments for the services that were not rendered, what was the response? Hence, we issued, Honorable Mabilo, the material irregularity notification to the accounting officer. And then the accounting officer now, what is he gonna committed to do is to institute an investigation into what led this financial loss in this current for this particular transaction. So I think that investigation will also assist in terms of what really happened, what was the reasons, and therefore we'll be able to understand based when the investigation has been finalized. But now it still needs to be undertaken by the accounting authority, and then so that they can get to the bottom of what really transpired that resulted to the payment that was never paid back to the entity. I will just pause there, and also, Honorable Chair, with your permission, to allow for my other colleagues to augment where I could not cover properly. Thank you. With your permission, Chair.
Yes, please, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I just want to add on the issue of the material irregularity on what does it mean now with us having issued the notification, the accounting authority having responded to the notification with commitments in terms of the actions that they will be taking to address the material irregularity. We will be monitoring those actions. However, Honorable Chair, if we observe that there are any delays in the implementation of those actions, it would mean that we move to the next step in the material irregularity process, which would be to include specific recommendations in the auditor's report of SA Tourism. And if those specific recommendations around how they need to deal with the material irregularity are still not implemented, we'll then move on to the stage of the Auditor-General issuing a remedial binding action. And that remedial binding action would also have timelines against which the Accounting Authority of SA Tourism would need to comply with. If there's still challenges with the MI being resolved at that stage, then the Public Audit Act has given the Auditor General powers to then issue a certificate of debt where the members of the Accounting Authority of SA Tourism would be liable for the payment of the money that was not recovered. So there are various stages that are part of the material irregularity process that needs to be followed. But at this stage, we're at the stage where we will be giving the Accounting Authority space to implement the proposed recommendations. If they are able to recover the money and implement consequence management, complete the investigation, improve the system of internal control, we should be able to then get to a point where we close the material irregularity because all of those actions would have been deemed to be satisfactory. And there would be no need for us to move to the various stages leading up to the issuing of a certificate of debt. The intention in the material irregularity process was never to be to issue the certificates of debt immediately, but to give accounting authorities space to rectify the situation, recover the money that has been lost, improve the system of internal control so that there is no recurring instances going forward. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much to both the presenters for their responses. I think we were fully covered. Is there anybody else that would like, sorry, sorry for that, would like a follow-up question? Okay, I don't see. All right, I see a hand, Niku. Honorable Pino?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Madam Chairperson, it might be, off the cuff a bit here, but I'm just quite curious about some figures that were raised. Now, obviously, the Department of Tourism has a budget of hundreds of millions of rands. But my question is, they are attributing a lot of the tourism to their department. So when we have visitors and it amounts to 200 million or 500 million of investment in the country with regards to tourism, they take ownership and pride in that and say, yeah, it's because of them. And I'm just quite curious, how do you, as the AG's office, how do you make that calculation, and how much can you really attribute to or contribute to their interventions? Because they're saying, we're having these tourism, influxes and all this stuff, and they're saying, yeah, it's because of us, it's because of the SAT, it's because of the NDT. But how do you make that calculation, and is that honestly realistic? Because obviously that's how they get funding. They use those figures to say, look what we have done in the last financial year. Look how much money we've brought in. Is that an honest way to take ownership of those investments or indirect investments in South Africa? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Pino. I don't know if it's going to be Ms. Matanzi or Mr. Malangeni that's going to answer. I see Mr. Malangeni's name. Hands up. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, in terms of our audit process, we do consider information that is released by the department that is responsible for statistics, which is Statistics South Africa, in terms of recording the number of tourists that come to the country and how they spend money. Also, what is critical is that when you look at SA Tourism, it is a marketing agency. And the thing about marketing is that when you derive the benefit, you may not be in a position to say 100% of the 100 million tourists that came to the country are because of the marketing campaigns that we embarked on. But I think it's all about improving the number of people that are coming to the country, ensuring that there are products that are put out there to ensure that people do come to the country. And the opposite is the case. If SAT is spending money, yet we are seeing a decline in the number of tourists coming to the country, then one would begin to question whether or not the campaigns that are being implemented, the activations that are being implemented are working or not. So when we're seeing an improvement and we're seeing tourists coming to the country, one would need to then assess whether or not the increase in the number of people that are coming to the country are as a result of the activations that have been implemented across the world. Thank you very much. But in terms of validity, accuracy, and competence, we do consider other sources such as Statistics South Africa, which is an official department that is responsible for statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive reply, Mr. Malangeni. I think Honourable Pina now understands, and he now, after this, has the opportunity to engage with SAT and NDT. Ma'am Matanzima and Mr. Malangeni, thank you very much for your presentation. As always, the AG gives us a lot of information that we can work from, and we really appreciate you taking time off your busy program to enlighten us about SAT and NDT, and we look forward to further engagements on the other departments that we still have to meet with. And as we are now going to meet with NDT and SAT, you may be excused, and once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair.
Colleagues, whilst we are just getting ready to have the presentations by SAT and by NDT, I just want to inform you that we got a notification or a message from the Minister. She tried everything in her power to excuse herself from the cabinet meeting, but it was not granted. So it makes it very difficult for us to engage with her because Wednesdays are cabinet meetings, and the Deputy Minister is also out of the country on a regional visit. If I was led to believe it's maybe Botswana, we're not quite sure, but neither the Minister nor the Deputy Minister are available. But colleagues, you all received the letter. I asked Mardia to circulate it to you all, the letter from the Honourable Minister explaining the reasons behind the resignations and her steps forward with regard to the board members of South African Tourism. And I think the letter was completely self-explanatory. If there's something you would like to know about that, we can maybe discuss it. We could maybe answer, but I'm not quite sure we're in a position to be able to answer. So I think at this point in time, we must accept the Minister's apology as well as the Deputy Minister's apology. It is something out of their control, and in view of that, I'd just like to know who from the department is here and who will be presenting on behalf of the department and on behalf of SAT. But before we carry on with that, I just want to say to you that we have to commend Madia, our secretary, for all her hard work. She has secured a venue for our SC meetings, and this will be communicated in due course where it is and the logistical arrangements of it, because it will not be on the precinct, and the first meeting will only be after our oversight to the Free State. So could I just be informed as to, I see the DG's hands up, but before I hand over to him, Niku, is that a legacy hand? Honorable Pina, is that a legacy hand or is that a new hand?
It's a new hand, Madam Chairperson. Madam Chairperson, I did receive the letter with regard to the resignations. I just want to raise my concern on that. Madam Chairperson, I found in my experience that there's always two sides to a story. And I would actually like to request the Select Committee ask the Minister for copies of the resignation letters. So we can maybe there's some information there as well that we are not aware of. And I think we should be not taking it at face value, just what the Minister is saying, but really get to the bottom of it with regards to the resignation. So I would request that the Select Committee receives a copy of the resignation letters of those board members and Select Committee and senior management members. And that is just a request from my side. I think it will give us a better insight as well, have proper insight. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much for that, Honourable Pina. I'm sure that I can write a letter to her requesting that those letters or the reasons behind the resignations be given to us, and we can then take it from there. Honourable DG?
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson. Hoping you also have a speedy recovery. And good morning to the Honourable members of the Select Committee, and greetings to the colleagues from the side of Parliament, from SAT, as well as from the department. Honourable Chairperson, I am joined by...
DG, before you carry on, sorry for interrupting you. Please just take note, you've got 45 minutes for your presentation.
Noted, Honourable Chairperson. I'm joined by the DDGs. They will not necessarily present, but they will assist if there are questions that are specific to their programs. And I'm also joined by the acting CFO of the department. The reason why we are with the acting CFO, Mr. Mohit Maharaj, is because the CFO had put in leave some time back before the schedule was confirmed, and had already made the arrangements and everything. And unfortunately, being public service, we would not have been in a position to reimburse her for whatever losses she would have incurred in this regard. But Mr. Maharaj is a capable finance person. He actually is the person who puts together our financials. So he's pretty much a big part of what the AG reported as statements that have got no material misstatements and all that, with no amendments that were required and all those kinds of things. I am going to ask that the parliamentary officer from the department, that will be Petra van Niekerk, she should project for us if she could be given rights to do so. And I will run through the presentation, and with your permission, Honourable Chairperson, I am going to skip everything that we had packaged in this presentation for purposes of giving a report on the outcome of the audit by the AGSA, as that has already been presented by AGSA in proper detail. Petra, let's go to slide 3. I'm not sure, Chairperson, if it's visible on your side or we need to do it on slideshow.
It is visible on my side. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much. So we have the mandate of the department, and we do know that it is a concurrent function in terms of the constitution, legislative mandate. We're still operating with the Tourism Act 2014. We have not amended this as yet, but it is important to take note when it comes to policy mandate that as of 4th October, a new white paper was gazetted. So we do have a fresh policy mandate, which by and large is going to influence the plans for next year, not necessarily for this current financial year. But of course, this is in retrospect. So this is reporting against what we were doing in the past. So the 1996 white paper was still the policy basis of what we were doing. NDP as well, the NTSS, the current NTSS that we've got, the National Tourism Sector Strategy, is still valid until 2027. There might be a possibility of that being reviewed to allow it to align to the full term and also beyond that, because we normally do that for a 10-year period. And then we've got the Tourism Master Plan, and this Tourism Master Plan was adapted from the Tourism Recovery Plan that we've been implementing. The results we've seen, and we'll then go into the actual results. Let's go to slide number 5, Petra. Overall, we have a performance of 93.48%. And the 3 programs that are directly responsible for service delivery environment all got 100% of their targets. We had a bit of a challenge when it comes to program 1. There are 2 targets where significant work was done, Honorable Chairperson, and this significant work that was done in these 2 includes 1, the payment of service providers within 30 days. We ended up at about 99.3 something percent. And in this area, just 1 invoice, it then does not become 100%. But we really have pushed from the previous year. I think we have gained almost like 3 percentage points, which has taken us to 99.3%. It's an area that we are keeping a very close eye on. And in the last quarter, when we submitted our reports, we were at 100% of this current financial year. And we are monitoring it closely so that we can actually improve on that. The second one was women at senior management level. We were at about 46% instead of 50%. It's a target we keep on pushing, and a related target which we actually did not achieve because we were above 11% against a target of 6%. Self-imposed target, I need to indicate, Honorable Chairperson, the target across government was about 10%. We imposed a target on ourselves because we were already at 8%. That target was a target of 6%, but we ended up at about 11.5. We'll go into the detail percent in terms of the actual vacancy rate. There are 2 issues here that are at play. One is that there's been a change in how we should actually fill posts. When a post gets vacated, we need to write through the minister to the Minister of Public Service and Administration to request to fill that post, irrespective of what level of the post, what the level of that post is. Then the Minister of Public Service and Administration will also consult with the Minister of Finance or with National Treasury. And National Treasury will then confirm with them that this is okay, it's adequately provided for in as far as their own figures are concerned. And after which then the Minister of Public Service will write back to the Minister of Tourism, and then the Minister of Tourism will then inform us that it has been approved. Then from there, we can then commence with the process of filling the post and so on. In some instances, you do find a post. I mean, the most recent example, we've got 2 posts that attracted more than 9,000 CVs. And we have to go through each CV properly. And we must make sure that we are recording how we have actually considered these things in a fair manner and so on. So that takes quite a lot of time. And when you've got a bulk of those positions that you're supposed to go through, and you've got lots and lots of applications, that then really has got a genuine impact in terms of how we can actually fast track such processes. We can move on, Petra, to slide number 10. Thank you. I will do highlights in the interest of time. Of course, the honourable members, Chairperson, they've just you've just received this report about the clean audit that we have received as a department. We are happy about it. I do need to state that we have been working long and hard to get to this particular point. And Honourable Chairperson would know this from the 6th Parliament, that we've been working at it, but we take note of the outcome of SAT. It's our entity, even though the accounting authority as the board is the one that has the responsibility, but it remains our entity. And some of that work in terms of what are we doing that they may also be able to do, and so on. What they are doing, there are some other things that they may be doing better than us, but we need to find ways to assist where we can within the confines of the law. I do need to state that as an accounting officer, I don't have any powers in terms of the Tourism Act to intervene. And the most I can do is to stretch it a little bit and use the PFMA to attach conditions to what money is being transferred in terms of what reports I would require to be able to assist the minister in her oversight responsibility with regards to this. But this is something that we will preoccupy ourselves with, and how the systems internally can actually enable the minister to intervene where there is intervention required. I've reported about the 99.35% in terms of the payments of invoices. And the ones that I think I must flag here, we had targeted 40% procurement of goods and services that would come from SMMEs. We are happy to report that we achieved 57.97% in that regard, which demonstrates some level of biasness towards SMMEs on the part of the department. And we have also, we had a target of 40% procurement of goods and services that would come from women-owned businesses. We are also happy there to report that 41.58% was achieved. This is also in the GBV framework, this 40%, and that we internalized it, and we were able to actually get the results for that. I think we can move on, Petra, to the you can go to page 13. I have reported the 46%. We are working hard to try and get this right. I do know that this month we'll be joined by another woman at SMS level, at a chief director level, which will add to our numbers. Unfortunately, we also have a male senior manager who will also be going on retirement. It will add to those numbers, but we are not happy to lose the capacity. But it will add to the numbers. So we are pushing closer and closer to that end for that particular target. So we hope that whatever we're doing, we'll be able to hopefully achieve this particular one in the coming year, as well as the one for the people that are for the expenditure, for the payments or within 30 days as the prescriptions. Then we in terms of persons with disability, this is an area where, Honourable Chairperson, we are doing well. other departments also and other entities out there, they come and request for opportunity to benchmark and so on. We do have 21 people in the department with various forms of disability. But important here is continuous engagements, getting to have a better understanding of the needs, both particularly for the supervisors, but also for the subordinates, in terms of how best they can actually support the process of provision of reasonable accommodation beyond just the physical infrastructure, but also provision of the real infrastructure in terms of tools of trade as well. They are highly specialized tools of trade, and understanding is required, and provision for resources for that purpose is also supposed to be made, but also making time to actually hear what are the developments, how is the situation on the ground, and so on. So that I thought I should also highlight as an area that we are definitely doing very well in, and we would like to sustain that. Then I am going to briefly, we can pass this, all of this has been done. I'm going to request that Mr. Mohit Maharaj comes in and present the financial information. Then I'll come back immediately after that and conclude the rest of the programs, but we'll take probably about another 10 minutes or so. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, members and colleagues. I'm going to quickly take you through our financial performance as the Department of Tourism. The department had a final appropriated budget of 2.461 billion, and actual spending was 2.372 billion. So we had a variance of 88.3 million in terms of our spending. And if we go to the next slide, it gives us the breakdown of expenditure by program. We have 4 programs as the department. The first is our generic program in terms of administration. We had a total budget of 312.8 million. We spent 303.1 million of that budget, which translates to a 96.9% spending. The actual variance is 9.7 million, which is a 3.1%. The majority of this underspending is attributed to compensation of employees, primarily due to the delays in filling of positions exacerbated by the freeze on vacant posts brought about by the cost containment. And on the COE, the amount is about 9.1 million of that 9.7 million in terms of underspending. Then we also had slight saving under goods and services, which is attributed to the implementation of cost containment measures in accordance with the National Treasury directives. And in that regard, we have a 537,000 of that 9.7 million, which was saved. Going to program 2, which is Tourism Research Policy and International Relations, we had a budget of 1.378 billion. We spent 1.367 billion, which translates to a 99.2% spending of our budget. The actual variance is 11.320 million. And it is translated to a 0.8% variance. So the major portion of the underspending, again, is within compensation of employees for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And the actual underspending on COE is 11.072 million of that 11.3 million. And then we also have savings under transfers and subsidies for the United Nations World Tourism Organization's contribution, which is attributed to fluctuations in the foreign exchange rates. and that is about 249. That is 249,000 of the 11.3 million. I should just mention there that at the time of payment, obviously the exchange rate was in our favor, so we paid less than we actually budgeted for. And then we have Program 3, Destination Development, which had a budget of 422.2 million. They spent 359.9 million of that, which is 85.2% spending. And the variance, actual variance, is 62.3 million, which is a 14.8% variance from our appropriated budget. Yet again, we had underspending within compensation to the value of 6.3 million. And again, it's due to delays in the filling of posts for the reasons mentioned. And then the major part of the underspending for Program 3 is under goods and services. And this is money for our EPWP incentive budget. So this is attributed to the department not receiving approval to utilize the EPWP incentive budget, as the department did not meet the job creation or the FTE job targets set by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And the amount of underspending related to the incentive budgets for EPWP is 55.9 million. I should stress there that while targets were met towards the last quarter, this did not feed into their considerations by the DPWI. So we therefore didn't actually get to use that remaining budget of 55 million. We then have Program 4, which is Tourism Sector Support Services, which had a budget of 346.6 million. They spent 341.7 million. And that's a 98.6% spending, and the variance is 4.9 million, which is actually 1.4% of the budget for the program. And again, the majority of the underspending is within COE to the value of 4.4 million. And there was also slight savings under goods and services to the value of 474,000, again due to cost containment measures as per national treasury directives. And then if we move to the next slide, it gives us a quick overview of our expenditure per economic classification. And as I mentioned earlier, the compensation of employees, we had a 92.1% spending of the budget, goods and services 86.3%, and you look at the variances there, 31 million for COE and 56 million for goods and services. So that was the main budget variance in terms of economic classifications. For all the others, I think we did fairly well, and I'm not going to go into too much detail due to time considerations. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. And that's my input into the presentation. Back to you, DG.
And thank you very much, Moe. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We, on the HR information, we had a complement of 482, and within that we had 422 Africans, that makes 87.6%, colors 5.4%, 26 people, Asians 14%, 14 people, 2.9%, and white 20 people, 4.1%. And then we've got persons with disability. Let's move on, Petra, to Program 2. 26. Thank you. We've got all these reports that we have stated here, Honorable Chairperson, and these reports are already with our parliamentary officer, and we have committed that they will be made available, because they will then, where we have done an assessment of something, monitoring and evaluation report for something, all of those things, the actual value is in the real report, because the report would then be able to point us in the direction where there might be a need for certain interventions, even from a policy point of view. E.g., if one looks at number 4, evaluation of the Tourism Grading Council Accommodation Grading Program, that report is there, but it would also begin to clarify a lot of questions that may be there about the position as it relates to the policy position going forward and so on. So those kinds of reports are there, and they all will be made available. But what is important is that the areas that they focused on, the incubation that we had done across the country, Manyeleti, Pilanesberg, Bapalaburwa, as well as Mir in the Northern Cape. All of these will then start to give insights into exactly what was it, who benefited, how they benefited, how sustainable is the manner in which they benefited, and so on. So those are the kinds of things that are in the details of each of those different reports. And what we would say is that where there are instances where, Honorable Chairperson, the committee does feel that there's a need to present one or two, we will be ready to do so to make sure that we can then go into the details of this and be able to demonstrate precisely what came out of all these reports. Let's move to the next slide. I do want to just highlight number 2, which is the National Tourism Statistics Plan. We are working towards making sure that we can get to a point, Honorable Chairperson, where the division of the statistics gets to the provinces. And I think this will be a tool that is of interest to the select committee in particular. That's work that we do with Statistics South Africa, again, there will be readiness in terms of making sure that this can be presented if required. I want to highlight in particular the Tourist Guide Information System. Honorable Chairperson would recall in the 6th Parliament, during COVID, we had this tool that we had this facility that we had put in place to assist tourist guides that were affected due to the lockdown. And what that provided for was there will be a certain amount of payment per month, 1,500 per month for a period of 4 months for those guides and so on, with a condition that those are guides that are not necessarily employed. So this would have been your freelancers and so on. But the integrity of the registers, because the guides are registered by the provinces, the Tourism Act gives that power to the MECs, who appoint the tourist guides registrars in the province, who must then be the ones who register the tourist guides. And the integrity of the various registers was different. Some had spreadsheets, some had systems, some didn't even have spreadsheets. They just captured the information whichever way they felt would be appropriate for them. So there was nothing that communicates with another and so on. And as a result, it compromised the manner of support that we were supposed to actually provide in that regard. Some of the recommendations that came out of that experience was that we need some sort of a system where the provinces, once they've registered the guides, they will feed the information into, but they will also have rights to make sure that they update their information as and when a guide's license expires and so on. That must be updated and make sure that everything is in place, including as and when we've got people who are deceased and so on. That should also be updated accordingly and so on. So those are some of the functionalities that are actually in this particular system. So it is trying to close that gap, but legally it doesn't take away the fact that provinces are the responsible party in terms of providing the information. So whatever they have provided to us, ultimately, they would have gone through certain checks and balances and so on. But if the information remains incorrect, it means we would be working with incorrect information. But they will now go and authenticate. And so we will also be assisted by the likes of Home Affairs for things like work visas related to this, things like the identities of the people and so on. Let's move on. We did quite a lot of work with regards to UNWTO, the G20, BRICS, SADC, IORA as well, and the AU. Important here that we should flag is that it is now going to be South Africa's presidency of G20, and there will be work that will be done from the department side in this regard. There will be engagements right until the ministerial meeting, which will take place, if I'm not mistaken, 12th of September 2025. But it will be preceded by technical meetings. And the first technical meeting is going to be virtual, but there will be a meeting around the time of Indaba that will be attended by the various stakeholders that are associated with G20, the members, as well as those invitees, more than 300 people that will be coming in. And Minister has raised what I would say is a question to say, thus far, in all that she has seen, she has not seen the role of Parliament in this G20 process and whether there is something that is being planned and so on. And I'm depositing this so that if there is anything that perhaps the members and the Honorable Chairperson are aware of or to consider in the further planning processes within, that then gets taken into account. Besides us hosting the tourism stream, so to say, there is also there will be a lot of meetings that will also take place of the different other sectors and so on. And as those meetings are taking place, we also have an interest in the tourism aspect of that. How do we keep them here longer? How do we make sure that they've got the right packages and so on? So there will be work that will be done with the industry to make sure that they are exposed to this even before they actually come to the country, so that they can then make their decisions as to what else they will be doing when they're here. And I thought I should actually highlight that as an important aspect. We can move on to program 3. Again, here too, we were able to achieve all the targets. What is important here, which has also been mentioned by the AGSA, is to strengthen our mechanisms of oversight over the implementing agent for most of our projects, which is the Development Bank of Southern Africa, so that the things that the AG was saying we need to keep an eye on. We do keep an eye on all those things, but also make sure that in the end, the delays that they had mentioned with regards to projects, we must make sure that those delays are flagged and we apply provisions of the contract in this regard, and make sure that we are in a position to accelerate the implementation in those projects that the implementation was lagging behind. But having said that, there are a number of projects on the maintenance side in particular that are fully completed, that are at a completion stage, which should be soon which should soon be getting to the handover stage, and we are going to monitor that so that we don't keep this and just keep the projects with us, because the risks are much higher. Important also here on slide number 32 is that the work opportunities were achieved and exceeded. And I do need to indicate that the bulk of this would be associated to the activities of Program 4, whether it's the training related to the different types of programs, chefs, sommeliers, and all that, or whether it is the tourism safety monitors and so on. So they are accounted for here because we have used this facility, this particular program, as the bank that funds the different EPWP programs and so on. All these are things that the minister has directed, that as we go into the next cycle, which is the beginning of the 5 years, starting 1st of April next year, we re-look at this and how best we can actually position going forward. So those are some of the things that we are actually going to do. On the infrastructure side, she has also directed that we must have some capacity internally in a form of PMU that will be able to do oversight on the implementing agents, but manned or resourced, to be gender correct, resourced with people that have got technical expertise. So we're talking about quantity surveyors who will then be able to go through the bills of quantities and tell us whether this is indeed what it is. Your civil engineers, structural engineers, and those types of people. Some may not necessarily be in-house, but must be accessible instantly. That's why we've got one person who's got such sort of expertise. And we have requested DBSA to also recruit more. They've agreed with us. They've authorized that we can recruit 2 more people, and those people will be recruited on a contract basis. So as we then get to the next year, we have to first complete the strategy for the 5 years, revisit the business case overall. And once we have that, then restructure and then go through processes of approval, which will have to go to the Minister of Public Service, go to Treasury, come back to Public Service, and then come back to our minister to sign off to say now it can actually be implemented. That might take longer. So that's why we are also having this sort of like stopgap measure that we will be able to use in the interim. Program 4, yes, we have also achieved all the targets here. We can move on. You honorable members probably are familiar with the green incentive program that we've been implementing. I would encourage honorable chairperson that at some point we get the opportunity to present the overall tourism incentive program and what we are doing in that environment. There are some good things that come from there. Of course, there are also some areas that we do need to improve, and we will then be in a position to actually share all of that information. The Green Incentive Program, we do it with IDC. It's been doing quite well. People are saving quite a lot in terms of electricity, reducing their own footprint of establishments, thereby making their establishments a lot more sustainable. And we believe that it's a program that will most likely also take to the next, without preempting what the plan is going to look like, but to the next cycle as well. We did the domestic tourism campaigns. I think it is important to also highlight the different incubations that we were dealing with. We had a food service incubator, we had a community-based tourism enterprise incubator, we had the tourism technology and innovation incubator. This one we do it in partnership with Technology Innovation Agency, which is an agency of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. We were able to do all of that. We can then go, Petra, to, I would say, let's move to slide 37.
Sorry to interrupt, 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Slide 37, Petra. We had a target of 2,500 unemployed youth to be trained on the norms and standards. These norms and standards, Honorable Chairperson, are the norms and standards that we published subsequent to the lessons from COVID. So in the event that we are to experience another health-related emergency of sort, we are able to use these for ourselves. So we are ready to be able to operate without necessarily having to wait for state of disaster, but we continuously train SMMEs and also train unemployed youth with regards to this. For the unemployed youth, it's an added advantage for them when they go to that environment and they've got this. We have also done recognition of prior learning for people that have been working in the culinary space, but they did not necessarily have a qualification. And now those people, through the RPL process, are recognized as chefs. They now have full certification, and they are now qualified chefs. And that's a program that we are continuing with as well this year. We change provinces from year to year. And it's also important to indicate that of the identified skills areas that we're training, the various programs and so on, food service, the food and beverage services, the professional cookery, food safety, quality assurance, and so on, hospitality. That continued. We had a target of 1,500. We recruited more. We were able to actually get 1,905. So this starts to explain how we actually got to that EPWP figure that was much higher. And we are going to review. It's important to say this. Minister has already requested that we start reviewing our skills offering to make sure that going forward, there's a much greater alignment with the skills that are now currently in demand, and also skills that would actually last us into the future as well, given the changes in the environment. So that's some work that we're dealing with, but all of that will come out quite clearly as we then bring the plans for the next financial year. That was the last slide. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DG and CFO, for your presentation, colleagues. If we have a look at the time, it is running out, and we still have to engage SAT. And my opinion is that the SAT is the problematic entity that must be engaged with. So I'm going to ask that your questions be asked, those that are critical and those that you feel can stand over, that you put them in writing to the department. But those that you ask now, DG, if we can ask for a written response to these questions that they're going to ask now within 7 working days from today. Does that carry your approval? Thank you.
Agreed, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I see who has a question that they need to ask to the department now? I see the hand of Honorable van den Berg. No other questions, Honorable van den Berg?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in the interest of time, I'll keep it short. I'm referring to the concept of working in silos. So my question to you at the end of my comment would be, how do you as NDP also deal with SAT? Is there any way of working together? Then my comment is, while we were busy in Carnarvon with the World Tourism Day and trying to create a tourism Astro-based tourism venue for out of Carnarvon, right at the same time, Transnet was busy removing those rail tracks from the lost highway rail system, and are still busy right now doing that. So it's a typical example of two departments working in silos, not speaking to each other. We appreciate that Transnet might have different priorities and goals compared to NDP, but that should be spoken to. So in the same site or in the same lens, I would ask, what is NDP work with SAT so that we also reach common goals there? And then just another comment is that those reports on what did you remember, committee has to, and it's a new committee, so we have to, at the end of the day, acquaint ourselves with what you do and the amount of work that you do, because when it comes to the votes and money, you need us to support you. Therefore, through the course of the next term, if you could please help us to understand by giving us access and explaining those reports to us. A report is a thing that normally gathers dust because it's large, but I'm sure that we can work through that. So that's just my quick question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honourable van der Berg. If you can lower your hand. DG, as requested, I felt that was more of a comment, but there is a question emanating from the comment. If you could give that response to Honourable van der Berg within 7 days. Thank you very much. In light of that, I'd like to ask that South African Tourism move in to do the presentation. I don't know who takes us through that. I see the hand of Gregory Davids.
Good afternoon, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. My name is Gregory Davids. I'm the newly appointed Chairperson of the SAT Board. And also good afternoon to the fellow Portfolio Committee members. Chairperson, yes, as the newly appointed Chairperson of SAT, we're not very happy with the audit outcome. Furthermore, the AG's report provides us a blueprint of the weaknesses, as the AG earlier have indicated. The AG have also provided us some guidance on how to turn the situation around. But allow me, Chairperson, to also indicate who is with me from SAT. With me from SAT is the CEO, Nombulelo Guliwe, and the
Mr.
executive.
David, sorry for interrupting. Just for take note, 45 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Chairperson. Jens, I'm just introducing the CEO, and I'll immediately going to hand over to the CEO for the presentation, and then also the questions that will be coming. Thank you, Portfolio Chairperson. CEO.
Sorry, Honourable Mr. Davids, just take note that we, the Select Committee in the NCOP, I know you're a new board member.
Yes.
The members of the NAL Portfolio Committee members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Sorry for that error. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and members of the Select Committee. My name is Nombulelo Guliwe. I'm the CEO of South African Tourism. In the room with me, I've got the head of finance, Chair, who will take us through the finances. I also have the entire executive team, so that we are then able to account on the results of the last financial year. I'm going to ask Pietra, who's on the call, just to share our presentation and to drive on that side. Thank you, Chair. Chair, noting the time and the need for us to account, I'm going to go through the presentation, just highlighting important sections so that there's sufficient time for engagement. On slide 2, Pietra, slide 2 of the presentation, we've got our table of contents that just starts with our vision, mission, and mandate. So those are all linked to the policy environment under which we operate, as well as the legislation that South African tourism is mandated by. I'm not going to go into detail with those, but we'll focus on the performance information as well as the non-financial performance and financial performance. I'm going to also ask the head of finance to take us through the finances, Chair, when we get to those slides. So without wasting time, I'm going to move to slide 8, which is the tourism sector performance for the financial year under review. This slide talks to the international arrivals for the last financial year and where South Africa as a destination is tracking in terms of attracting tourists to South Africa. So in the last financial year that we audited, we had just over 8.8 million arrivals to South Africa that we welcome to our country. When we compare that, Chair, with the last financial year, so the comparative year of the audit, the growth there was just over 30% in terms of numbers. What is key and critical for the work that we need to do, especially in the 2024-25 financial year, is that we have to now close that 11.5% gap and start to show positive growth because it has been projected even by international tourism authorities that the global tourism space is going to reach and breach pre-pandemic numbers at the end of 2024. So that's by the end of December. So in the next quarter the last quarter of this financial year, what we should be showing and what we will show South African tourism is a closure in the gap of the number when we compare it with 2019 numbers. The story for spend, Chair, is different. Whilst in the arrivals number, we are tracking below pre-pandemic levels. For spend, we have positive growth, so we've exceeded our pre-pandemic numbers where total foreign direct spend grew by more than 27.5%, reaching at the end of the last financial year just over 95 billion rand. Key to note there for members is that that number was mainly driven by the marketing work that happens in the continent. So Africa and our tourists from Africa contributed significantly to the number, as well as the continent of Europe is where some of our big spenders come from. Again, when we compare this with the last financial year, where we closed the year in 2022-23 with 74.6 billion rand in terms of spend by tourists, the year that was audited, that increase of 27.5% meant that more than 9.5 billion rand was then accrued during the year under review. I'm going to move to the next slide, which shows the picture on domestic marketing, so the work that we do for domestic tourism, and I'm on slide 11. So on the domestic side, so the money that was invested in domestic tourism and the activities that were put in place to market our country domestically led to a total domestic overnight trips of just over 37 million. This is at the end of March 2024. When we compare it with the previous financial year, there was a 3% increase in terms of the overnight trips. When we look at revenue, Chair, so similar to the international side, there was an increase in terms of revenue for domestic, that an increase of just over 19%, so 19.2% when we compare the domestic revenue with the numbers that we showed in the previous financial year, so the comparative year for audit, which was the year 2022 and 2023. This particular slide, Chair, tells a story of a domestic tourism market for South Africa that is filled with potential. One where if we don't just focus on marketing to the domestic, to our domestic tourists, but we also deal with issues of affordability, then it can significantly then contribute to our GDP. And that's why part of our marketing activities are not just aimed, especially for our domestic market, at running awareness campaigns and just marketing, but we also find through our initiatives like Travel Week, short-lived Travel Week, to also have deal-driven campaigns so that we then start dealing with the issue of affordability, working together with our colleagues in the private sector who actually own the products. Chair, from a holiday spend perspective, again, when we compare the numbers from the previous financial year, there was a 19.3% increase, reaching just over 56.5 billion during the fiscal that was audited. And then just lastly is to just confirm that the significant growth in the total overnight domestic spend performance for the year that was audited was driven by holiday trip spend, which accounted, when we take into account our total trips, accounted for just over 45% of our total overnight expenditure. I am now, Chair, going to move on to slide 13. It deals with our non-financial performance. So we have a South African Tourism 5 budget programs where we then allocate our financial resources to drive the different program objectives that we have that I will go through. I think what's key on the slide is just to confirm to members that in the year that was audited, our achievement was just over 70 or 78% when we compare our targets versus actual performance. It's not the performance that we want to be. We want to be as close. In fact, we want to get to 100% or as close as possible to 100%, despite there being an improvement in terms of non-financial performance when we look at the 2022-23 financial year versus the year that was audited. In terms of the programs, Chair, that contribute to directly to service delivery, the programs that we have within South African tourism that contribute directly to or that are linked to service delivery is program 3, so our leisure tourism marketing. This is where we allocate most of our budget, and this is where the work of marketing South Africa as an international and domestic tourism destination happens. In this particular program, at the end of the last financial year, 100% of the targets in that program were met. We also have program 4, which is our business events program, also one of those programs that contribute or are linked directly to service delivery. For program 4, we also then achieved 100% of the targets for the last financial year that was audited. Program 5, Chair, is where we had challenges, and it's an area of focus as we implement the action or recommendations from the AG that we got at the end of the last financial year to ensure that we improve not only our non-financial performance, but our financial performance as well. So for program 5, another program that's linked directly to a service delivery, we achieved 5 of the 6 planned target, with one of the critical targets, which is the number of graded establishments, which was not met at the end of the last financial year. This target that was not met contributed more than 17% to the overall targets of program 5. And I'll go through the reasons of underachievement as well as mitigations that we've put in place with the sole objective of improving the South African tourism environment. Chair, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is 14, and I would want to account for underachievement and spend more time in those slides. So the next slide, which is 14, and slide 15, 16, and 17, details information around the targets that were met So I'm just going to quickly go through. Maybe let me start with slide 14, which is program 1, corporate support. So I'm on slide 14. So for slide 14, this is one area that was a challenge for South African tourism. And in fact, when I go through the human resources slide, there's also a link in terms of the vacancies in this particular area. It's also linked to the regression in the audit outcome, because that's where the work that is linked to financial management happens. It's in program 1. So from a program 1 perspective, which is corporate support, we achieved 7 of the 14 targets. There was significant progress in 3 targets, and 4 targets were not achieved. I'll give more detail on the 4 that were not achieved. So just quickly, Chair, on the ones that were achieved, we achieved in the last financial year 100% payment of compliant invoices. We also had 6 SCM ethics and integrity initiatives that were implemented. The budget optimization strategy was developed, so that looks to optimizing the finances that we have. We also had a target that was linked to having women at South African tourism in senior positions. The target that is linked to people with disabilities that are employed within the entity was achieved. And we also have a target, Chair, that is linked to the number of Black people within South African tourism. That target was met. We also, as South African tourism, have a target that's linked to enhancing our technology environment and ensuring that we actually use technology to drive our marketing efforts. So that target was met during the last financial year. I'm also going to go through slide 15, which is program 2. Again, out of program 2, 6 of our targets were met. So 6 out of the 8 planned target, with a significant progress of 1 target and not achieving one of the targets. So going through the targets that were met, we did meet the target that's relating to 5 tourism information tracking surveys, which were completed. These surveys and the insights that we get from them are important for the marketing work that we do, so that we can then be able to be more targeted in the marketing and branding work that we do for South Africa as a tourist destination. We also, Chair, met the target that was linked to the quarterly trend analysis report. Again, it's important that we know what our competitors are doing, so that we then protect the market share of South Africa in terms of the tourist and the spend that is being directed to the country. During the last financial year, we also published 31 thought leadership pieces that are linked to tourism. And then also linked to that was the global PR and communications plan that we then executed during the last financial year. Chair, I am on program 3, which is the leisure tourism marketing. This one program is also linked to service delivery, directly linked to service delivery. Out of this program, we had 10 planned targets, and we met all 10 of the targets, with key achievements being in the implementation in the last financial year. So the year that was audited, implementing the global tourism brand campaign, where we embed awareness or brand awareness to all our potential tourists, so that they can then always think of South Africa as a destination that they can come to. So to convert them by building positive brand awareness. We also, in that particular year, in the country offices that we have, also have localized brand campaigns that we implemented. And the reason for that was that in every country offices, there are country nuances that we need to respond to. So we do have localized brand campaigns to, again, convert tourists for them to come to South Africa. We also had 4 regional seasonal campaigns, which were implemented in the continent. And this is important because out of the 8.8 million arrivals that we accounted for during the last financial year, just over 6 million comes from the continent. We also had, because domestic tourism is a priority for South African tourism, so linked to domestic tourism marketing was that we had 3 domestic seasonal campaigns that were implemented. And these seasonal campaigns were not just from a marketing perspective, but we also had what we call our deal-driven campaigns, where we then start to deal with the issue of affordability when it comes to domestic tourism being accessible to South Africans. Chair, we also had one of the big jobs that we do, the 336 distribution channels that were implemented, exceeding a target of 101. So this is where we deal with the trade, not just in South Africa, but in our international or key source markets, where we invest or do marketing activities. We deal with them. We then have knowledge sharing capability building sessions with them so that they are able to package South Africa and sell it, so that we can then drive numbers to our country. So 336 distribution channel initiatives were then achieved during the last year. And then lastly, it's the global trade plan that we executed fully in the last financial year. Chair, I'm now on slide 17, which is the program for business tourism. So out of the 8 planned targets, we achieved 100% of those targets. This particular program is important for our meetings and events sector, where we are able to showcase that South Africa is able and ready to host major conferences. So that work is accounted for under program 5. Just to quickly go through the targets and the performance. From a bidding perspective, we had a target of 93 bids, where we bid for international events to come to South Africa and to be hosted in South Africa. Out of that target, we submitted 95 bids. We also, Chair, deal with the issue of geographical spread, where economic activity should not be limited to specific areas. So your Cape Town, Durban, and Gauteng. So we had a target in our APP that's linked to geographic spend spread in terms of driving activity in your small dorpies, your towns, and your villages. We were able to host just 5 organizations hosted their conferences in villages, towns, and small dorpies, with a combined estimated economic impact of just over 3.8 million rand. Chair, we also hosted 2 of our own platforms that we own, which is the Indaba 2023. So this was in the last financial year, as well as Meetings Africa. And again, in terms of the numbers, for the number of delegates, the number of meetings, the number of buyers in that meeting, those particular targets were exceeded. Chair, the last one is the participation at 6 global strategic trade shows. I'm still on slide 17. That particular one is linked to a market access platform that we provide, particularly for our SMMEs in the tourism value chain, working together with the department led by our DG, where small players in the tourism sector are identified and are given an opportunity to participate in these international strategic platforms so that they are able to meet buyers and are able to then sign contracts to sell South Africa and be part of the products that are packaged and then sold, so that tourists can then come and experience the diverse offerings that South Africa has to offer. Chair, I'm now going to move to the last program, one where we did not meet all our targets. We had 6 targets, and out of the 6, we only met 5 of those targets, and that program is linked to visitor experience, which in the Tourism Act is linked directly to our quality assurance mandate. Key there in terms of the performance and versus the target is that from a grading perspective, we were able to implement our grading model and TGCSA value proposition roadmap. And this is important because revenue, or because grading is one of our line items in terms of revenue or income that we generate as South African tourism. So it's important that we are able to demonstrate to those establishments that are on our database the value proposition for grading. We also implemented our product proposition and its roadmap. So product talks to the different products that South Africa would have that then are linked to responsible tourism or sustainable tourism. So we were able to do work in that environment and execute the projects that we had planned at the beginning of the last financial year. And then just lastly, we also have a 3-year tourism value chain strategy and roadmap that was also developed and approved during this period. Chair, I'm now going to go through the areas of underperformance, starting with those performance where there was some progress, but we didn't get to 100% of the activities that needed to be executed in those programs in the last financial year. So the first one is linked to an APP target that is the corporate compliance campaign. So that is linked to attaining clean governance and a clean audit. This particular one, whilst some of the activities were executed, there was, particularly in Q2, an instance where, due to unavailability of project teams, some of the meetings where the activities that are linked to Operation Clean Audit, that those meetings didn't take place, and those activities were then not implemented, having an impact on the full financial year. Chair, an area of concern, and it's something that when the chairperson of the board started, also raised, and an area of focus that we are working, especially in the financial year, in the current financial year, tirelessly to ensure that we improve it, is the area of implementing valid audit recommendations based on the final management report from the Auditor-General. The last financial year, only 91% of those audit recommendations were implemented, having a negative impact on the audit outcome for the last financial year. And those areas where we have to zoom into and are zooming into so that we can then deal with those root causes that lead to the non-achievement of clean governance is the human capital area, where there were challenges in the policy environment. It's something that is an area of priority for our Audit and Risk Committee, as well as the REMCO committee, to ensure that we deal with the governance issues around human capital. Supply chain management is linked to the non-compliance with procurement prescripts that happened during the last financial year. As we go through the finances, we'll just give also reflect on some of the activities that we've undertaken with the aim of, or the objective of, improving our environment, as well as the risk, governance, risk and compliance business unit. We had some outstanding findings there, also linked for risk. In particular, it was linked to the fact that for almost a year, the organization did not have a risk officer. We've gone through a recruitment process in the current year with the sole aim of getting the necessary capability into the organization so that they can then start to assist us with dealing with risk management issues. Chair, the last one talks to women in senior and top management within South African tourism. So the target was 50%. At the last financial year, we only got 48%, and it was mainly due to the vacancies that we had at the end of the last financial year. There was movement, positive movement in Q1 of the current year, where we were able to then meet this target with the appointment of some of the senior managers, particularly in finance, where we had extensive gaps. We've now appointed a GM finance, as well as in the marketing side, we appointed a female CMO, but this was after the financial year. Chair, I'm going to go to slide 20. Again, significant progress dealt with under corporate support. It's the corporate brand index, where there was the target was 72.24 basis point, and we achieved 71.81 basis point. Whilst in the domestic side of the index, there was some improvement. The international corporate tracking was low, and when we then analyzed the insights around what impacted the non-achievement of the targeted brand index, it was linked to lack of communication. There were issues around visibility, but it was mainly attributable to the high vacancies that we have in country offices, where we currently have a number of acting positions, some centralized within head office, and with just one country manager. I think in hub head in Nigeria, that is the sole hub head. But between this reporting date and now, we've gone through a process of recruitment for hub heads, and that process is currently sitting at assessment level, where the identified candidates are going for the necessary checks and assessment. The one other target, Chair, that is linked to service delivery is the target of graded. I spoke to it when we were going through the program. It's one for us, again, key priority, because it's linked to service delivery. So we had a target of just over 5,462 graded establishment, and we achieved just under 4,700 graded establishment. And one challenge that we had during the year that was audited is that the tourism grading support program was not available during that period. It's a contract that we have between ourselves and the department. It was only renewed towards the last quarter of the financial year. So it meant then that graded establishments could only benefit from it at the end of the financial year, having a negative impact on the first 8 months of the last financial year. Just from a mitigation perspective, what we've done is that for the current fiscal, we had done the renewal and we had implemented the support for graded establishment at the beginning of the financial year, so from 1 April 2024. Chair, I'm going to go through the next slide, which is slide 22, before handing over to the head of finance to take us through the financial performance. Just corporate support.
Sorry, before you carry on, Ms. Guliwe, there's 5 to 7 minutes left for both of you.
Okay, I'll quickly go through it, Chair. So just on the targets which were not achieved, from a human capital perspective, and also linked to the fact that we had a moratorium at the end of the financial year, that also exists in the current financial year. Those two targets under one were not achieved. We do use fixed term contracts to try and capacitate the organization for critical positions. Under program 2, which is business enablement, we did not achieve the target that is linked to best company to work for. Again, what we've done there is that the executive team has tasked the human capital business unit to ensure that we prioritize the achievement of that target. Chair, without wasting time, I'm just going to ask the head of finance just to take us through the audited financials, and then I'll come back to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the committee. Briefly on the finances, South African tourism for the 2023-24 financial year, we managed to earn revenue of 1.576 billion against what was budgeted, which was 1.4 billion for the financial year. And that is literally attributable to us earning more of our sundry income, which is coming from exhibition income. And also we were given higher voluntary levies from TOMSA than what we had projected at the start of the financial year. And Chair, if you see, though we did receive a reduction in our allocation overall, we managed to earn more revenue than what we had budgeted for the financial year that was audited. If we move to the next slide, slide number 26, actually, because that is just an explanation where we look at the expenditure per program. In terms of the budget that was allocated, we spent it across the 5 programs for the organization. And I think I'd just like to zoom into program number 3, which is leisure, tourism, marketing. And that is where our brand and marketing activities are undertaken. When the AG reported earlier, Chair, they did mention that we did incur irregular expenditure during the financial year of the 24 million rand. And that irregular expenditure falls within this program number 3. And Chair, I thought it would be prudent for us to just give an update and more detail of where we are in terms of that irregular expenditure and the resolution thereof. Of the 24 million, 9.9 million was relating to the services rendered outside of the scope of the contract. The matter has been referred for further investigation with the SIU, and they are busy with that investigation, Chair. We will give an update at the next meeting or the next time we see the committee. An amount of 7.4 million rand, Chair, was the facilitation rights for the rugby events. The other 2.5 million of that 24 million was related to a union matter or rugby union matter. And the other amount was 3.8 million, which was related to a golf event where the deviation was, where the procurement was outside of the supply chain policy. These 3 amounts, Chair, or these 3 occurrences of regular expenditure, they were subjected to an investigation by an independent investigator. We did receive a report as at the 15th of August, and management is currently implementing the recommendations from that investigation. The amount of 3.8 million, Chair, is the only one that we are currently still in the process of determining and finalizing the irregular expenditure. And we will be concluding on that process also in the next coming few weeks. And that is where we are, Chair, in terms of just resolving the irregular expenditure that has been reported. Overall, we did report an accounting surplus of 81 million rand because our revenue generated was higher than the expenditure that we incurred for the year. And also, Chair, in terms of Instruction Note 12 of 2020-21 of National Treasury, we did also submit a request to retain our accumulated surplus for the year ended 31st of March 2024, and we are still awaiting feedback from National Treasury. Just to sum up, Chair, on the last slide, slide number 27, just to give the committee some comfort on the financial position of SAT as at 31st of March. Chair, we did assess as management the organization, and we concluded that we are comfortable that we are still a going concern financially, and we are remaining liquid, and we are also in a healthy financial state in that our solvency is sound, and we will be able to meet all our obligations as they become due, and our assets as the 31st of March exceeded our liabilities. So overall, I think the organization financially is in a good financial state in terms of us being able to continue with the implementation of our mandate in the foreseeable future. And I'll leave it there. Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quickly going to go through slide 28 and just confirm that on slide 29 to 31 shows the vacancy. So it is a challenge for us. We had just under 17% vacancies at the end of the financial year, but we are working to fill those positions because they've got an impact on the execution of the work that we need to do as South African tourism. I'm then quickly going to move to page 30 or slide 33, which deals with the governance report. And just, Chair, again, highlight that in the year under review, which also talks to the instability report from the AG that South African tourism had in total 3 different boards
with the first one being dissolved during April 2023. There was then a new board that was appointed between the 21st of April until Feb 2024. And then the board towards the end of the financial year was only appointed during 8 March 2024. So that just deals with board movements during the financial year. I know that the AG has given recommendation in terms of this particular area. I'm not going to deal with slide 35. I'll move to slide 36, which just shows that even though the Tourism Act talks about a minimum of 4 meetings for boards, we have in total just over 20 meetings in the 2023-24 financial year based on audited information. But for subcommittees, there were 3 meetings each during the financial year. This is an area with the new chair of the board that we are looking at ensuring that meetings are only held when it's necessary and where appropriate resolutions have to be passed. Chair, I'm going to go through without repeating what the head of finance has said, just talk through the audit outcome. We did get a qualified audit opinion for 4 items in the financial statements. So they were linked to payables, accounts payable, which is the credit side. The debit side for that was the marketing expenditure, which was linked to the issue of PO management and recognizing expenses using purchase orders versus invoices. The cash flow statement qualification was linked to us receiving TOMSA levies after year end and the reconciliation and impact of that in the cash flow statement. That also linked to cash and cash equivalents, where reconciliation then had to be done after receiving the funding, including ensuring that we do post facto reconciliation to linking it to the GL as well as the reconciliations. These are all areas that we are focusing on with the sole aim of ensuring that we improve, because it's not a desired state for us as well, Chair. Then just lastly on 39 is a summary of our performance information, where there were no material findings in the performance information. And then we also had a material irregularity for a 2021 Dubai Expo transaction where payment was made with no services. Part of the responses to the MI notification from the AG was to immediately ensure that South African tourism is not at a loss position. So the instruction from the board was that we then retain the funds from that specific supplier. So the 4.1 million, we've deducted that from the amount that we owe from the that is owed to the supplier to ensure that the entity is not at financial loss. But we are then also dealing with other commitments that we've made to the AG, and we will be tracking that and reporting back on it. And then just to close, Chair, and apologies, I see it's 12:52. I'm on slide 41. It just outlines the marketing work and the outlook for the next for the current financial year, and the work that we will be doing as South African tourism, which the most important one being the last bullet point, which is the implementation of the 2023-24 auditor's recommendation, so that we can then improve our environment. Thank you, Chair, for affording us an opportunity to present.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kuliwe. I'm going to ask that you afford us sometime after 1 o'clock, because it's pertinent that we get responses to the questions that the members would like to ask. And I just want to say that it is really time for SAT to get themselves into action to deliver on their mandate with regard to growth and jobs. SAT has a very long history of not fulfilling its duties effectively, and it has failed to reach the optimum level that the private sector would like to see from you. So we are prepared to extend our arms of assistance to you to ensure that this board is the board that's going to remain. Because in 18 months, we've seen the second board being put in place, and we cannot keep on having new board members every 18 months or every 24 months. It's just not good, and it doesn't speak well for South African tourism. And I would then like to ask that you please look at the recommendations you now said that you would, that the AG has given, because if I compare your report to that which the AG gave, it just doesn't speak to each other. If the AG had not presented, I would have thought that SAT is doing brilliantly, but in retrospect, it isn't. And we must remember that with the arrival of every 100 international tourists, it supports 2 jobs in South Africa. So for every extra tourist we get, the more jobs we can support. And I'm asking SAT to please bring to the table for the select committee a report on how you're going to take yourselves forward. And then I'd also like a report for this committee on the 3.8 million irregular expenditure. Because unfortunately, we do not meet with you on a weekly basis like the NA does. We have so many departments within our cluster, and we cannot wait for 4 weeks or a month before we meet again. So every report that you are able to give us in writing, we would appreciate it. Could I then ask for hands for questions, please? SAT is being left off the hook. Honourable Pinar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I can guarantee you they have not been left off the hook.
I see Honourable Farmer's hands also up now. Thank you.
Madam
And
Chairperson.
Honourable Mabilu.
Yeah, Madam Chairperson, I tend to agree with you. It's a shocking contrast between the AG's report and the report we were just presented by the CEO. And the AG's report speaks of a major financial issues with regards to accountability and irregular, wasteful expenditure, Madam Chairperson. And there's a few points I think are critical. And the first thing I think that must be said, we must remember, colleagues, in the select committee, and I want the department to understand this point, and this is why we are so important as the select committee. The money you are allocated every financial year is from the public. These are public funds, and they should be used as per strict regulation. We cannot have these irregular food-based expenditure. For some reason, the department has been very proud, to saying they reached their targets, they reached these targets and those targets. That simply means, Madam Chairperson, they are doing their work. It's nothing exceptional. And then at the same time, which I find really concerning, is the AG reports specifically said 0 investigations have been instated, and 0 disciplinary proceedings has been completed or is in the progress. And then from the report we just received, they are saying, no, we are zooming into the finances and we have referred it for investigations. But the AG report specifically says nothing has been investigated at this stage. Nothing. So there's a major contradiction here, Madam Chair, and I'm very concerned that we are being misled here by the department. So yeah, please explain why, according to the AG's report, no investigation has been initiated and no investigation or disciplinary procedures has been completed or is in the process. Then with regards to the resignations, and I hope the chairperson hears me, and it's something he will supply us with as soon as possible. I want to see the resignation letters from the chairperson, the deputy chairperson, and the CFO. I want to see why they resign. There's no way I'm just going to take his word for it or the word of the CFO. I want to see behind the screen. I want to get their side of the story. With regards to, I think I've got one more matter. Oh yeah. Finally, Madam Chairperson, the status quo currently at the department is not acceptable. I want to make it very clear that we as a select committee are not a tick box exercise. We will ensure accountability in your department, especially the senior leadership, and especially when it comes to the finances of the public. Your head of finance needs to make very sure that these things are put in order and put right, and we will be following them closely, Madam Chairperson, and they should not think they will get off lightly in any capacity, as we represent the public, and we will make sure people are held accountable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Pienaar. Honourable Farmer.
Chairperson, if I'm audible,
yes, you are.
I have a number of red flags around these presentations, but one thing that I would like to zoom in for now is the lady said on the finances in an explanation that she tried to give around the wasteful and fruitless expenditure. I think it was the 24 million or 27 million or 24.7 million. She broke it up in giving an indication to what has happened and where are they and what has been done and whatever. But then there's one part that they say it was for a rugby matter. Now I take exception to the way that was reported. Wow, what rugby matter? What do you think you are saying when you just give us such an information that was for a rugby matter? Can you please explain what rugby matter? What was that money used for in that rugby matter? And why it's being regarded as irregular? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Farmer. Honourable Mabilu, your hand was up, but it's down now. Do you still want to say something?
Yes, Chair. I just want to concur with the fact that the presentation that we are given now by SAT was preceded by the AG's report, and there's a disjuncture. I want to agree with that. But safe to say, Chair, that we need, what is our expectation as a committee? Our expectation is that because SAT has a huge potential to redress two critical questions confronting the country, which is joblessness and reducing the cost of living. So by attracting a lot of tourists, that can contribute positively towards those two targets, job creation and reducing the cost of living. And our country, we know, South Africa as a whole, in all the 9 provinces, they are naturally endowed with landscapes, beauty, that should be used maximally and globally. So that is one of our expectations. The second one, we would want to see a total crackdown on the current irregularities, on the current malpractices. We want to see remedial actions on all those irregularities. So that would be my approach to it. And then the chairperson, the newly appointed chair, we welcome you, chairperson, and congratulations on your appointment. Your job is clearly cut out in terms of your fiduciary responsibilities, leading the board, as well as yourself, CEO. I think, and your team, we would want to see really a massive improvement on the current challenges raised by the AG's office. We also want to see clear plans and steps of action to improve and ameliorate the performance. but broadly I'm covered by my colleagues. Thanks, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, honourable members. I don't know who's going to answer the questions posed by the members, but I just want to reiterate to the presenters, it is clear that everybody is of the opinion that spoke that there is a complete disjuncture between what the AG gave us and what you have presented to us. So we need an explanation on that. And I'm going to give over to you to respond to those questions and give us some background information as to why there is this disjuncture. And then, as Honourable Mabilo said, we know you are new board members, but unfortunately it's like us. We are thrown into a committee and we have to do our own research and background work to be able to be on par with what is happening. And I expect that the new board, even though you were only appointed on the 27th of September or elected, I don't know what the correct word is, but I think you should by now have found what the gist is of what is happening at SAT and be able to answer the members on the questions that they have posed. So, Ma'am Guliwe, or I didn't catch the name of the CFO because she was presenting under your name. So, whoever is going to answer the questions, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable members of the Select Committee for the questions. Chair, I just want to assure members that even on our side, we don't want to be dealing with a report or tabling a report that is this bad. It is, and that's why it's our objective to actually improve on it. We have engaged with the AG and we are fully aware of where our gaps are, and it's something that we want to improve because we also don't want to sit and not deal with the issues and close the gaps that have been identified. It's a priority for us that we come back and we start to demonstrate improvement. Chair, when you started, you asked that we provide a report for the 3.8 million irregular expenditure. Having listened to the questions, I think it's also, and respecting the Select Committee's role in also, I mean, and our duty to provide appropriate assurance on some of the statements that we've made. I think it's important that we not limit that written report just to the 3.8 million irregular expenditure. We'll provide a report, so where the head of finance has said there was activity, we'll then just provide those reports that account to the total 24.8 million, so that then there is a report that we can then be used for us to account if there were discrepancies between what we've said and the AG. The one thing that I know might be the reason for the gap is that the audit report was at the end of July, and I know that some of the reports, even though the processes started earlier, some are dated around the 15th of August, but those are reports by independent investigators that can be provided, and those independent investigators can also then be engaged independently. So we'll provide that information. Honorable Pinar, you spoke about the allocation of funds and the irregular and fruitless expenditure, which is unacceptable, and fully accept that and take accountability for it as the CEO of South African Tourism, including the accountability to make sure that when we come back and we account, we start to demonstrate that we are dealing with the issues and there are improvements. The issue of zero investigations, again, similar sentiments, Chair, around the AG's report and ours. I think for that particular one, we'll just provide the information and the reports and we can then engage based on that. So not limited to just the 3.8 million. Chair, you've asked for resignations. The letter, I have the CFO's one, so through
the office of the DG, and I'm sure my chair is also on the call for the other board members. That information can be then provided. Honorable Farmer, you referenced the 24 million, again linked to the questions that were raised by other members, also emphasizing and fully agree with you that is unacceptable, and we can't come back in a similar state when we have to account again. So as part of addressing, Chair, the reports and the timing difference, this will be part of the reports that we then provide to select committee, so that we can then engage on those written reports by independent investigators. Honorable Mabilo, you said there's a need for massive improvement, and you've asked for clear plans to improve. So together with the other documents that have been requested, because we are already, past the halfway mark for the current financial year, the plans and what we've implemented to date, that information can be provided, including the tracking of the recommendations that come from the AG. We can just provide to select committee as part of the other submissions what has been done to date, as well as the tracking. Because indeed, Honorable Mabilo, it is true that there is great potential within tourism to contribute to GDP. So by providing the reports and actually then dealing with the gaps in our presentation and the AG, we can then start to deal with issues of remedial action and being held accountable where we've done things wrong. Chair, those were the questions. I'm not sure, Nonhlanhla, if there's anything you want to add.
I think it's just a matter of the 2.5, the rugby union meeting.
Okay, you can then talk to it.
Okay. Thanks, Yo. I think I didn't provide the context when I spoke to the amounts of irregular expenditure. But in terms of the question raised by Honorable Farmer, I think the 2.5 million rand irregular expenditure, it's an amount that relates to the South African Rugby Union, which was the contracting party with South African Tourism. And the irregularity arose because there was a breach of our supply chain management policy. There was a breach of the procurement regulations and a breach of National Treasury regulations insofar as procurement is concerned. The transaction was incurred without following proper processes, and without even following the processes, there was a commitment made by an official of South African Tourism in that a contract was concluded with the rugby union without following the appropriate procurement and supply chain processes in terms of our policy and in terms of regulations that govern procurement. And under that contract, there were different activities that were listed that SA Tourism, together with the rugby union, would then be implementing in terms of that contract. And that is how that irregularity arose. And in what the organization did, the amount was not actually paid, the 2.5. However, we have accrued for it. And it was then subjected to the investigation, of which by 15 August, there was a report with recommendations, which management is currently then implementing in terms of the report from that investigation. And that is high level, Chair, the context of how that irregularity arose, the one for the 2.5 million rand. I hope I have answered that question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see the hand of Honorable Pienaar and then the DG. Honorable Pienaar?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And I want to say this to the Department of Tourism with the Chairperson and the CEO and all the relevant senior people online. Colleagues, we are stuck with each other for the next 5 years. So the committee you see here will be engaging with you over the next 5 years. So let's make sure we get comfortable with each other and transparent with each other, because I can tell you, we as the select committee will only get better in our job with regards to oversight. And so whether we like it or not, we are stuck with each other, and let's try to work together to find solutions and assist each other where possible to at the end of the day ensure that this country goes forward with regard to tourism, and in that way everybody wins. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 5 years, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Pinar. DG?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I have taken full note of what Honorable Pinar has said. I wanted to just indicate that we briefed the other House committee yesterday, and in that brief, there was an indication that the minister has made, and I'm sharing this because Minister did place it on record yesterday, that in some of the matters, there is a process that had started in terms of investigations which were done by SIU, but on a secondment basis. So SIU, you can get capacity through a secondment, or you can get things done through a presidential proclamation. However, on the basis of what was done, Minister has indicated that she will also further seek a proclamation on some matters. And as such, was saying that at that point in time, she felt that it would not be prudent to go into too much of the details, because some of the information may then have to be the information corroborating the request for that particular proclamation. I thought, Honorable Chairperson, it's important to put that through, that there is something of that sort, that process, because when you start hearing the officials from the entity not coming through fully in some elements, it's not necessarily that there's concealment. There may be those aspects at play as well. The other things that were requested, I think the chairperson will be able to facilitate that through ministry in terms of some of the documents that have actually been requested. But where there are such implications of these may be material for purposes of that proclamation, the responses would have to also include that to indicate that at this point, this is the situation, but post the proclamation, should that be granted, then a different approach, then we will yield that the information should come through. Because I want to say, Honorable Chairperson, when matters are not as yet concluded, and there's more than one party involved in those matters, and we are the only party, and I'm saying we here, royal we, the only party that is appearing before the committee is SAT, not the other parties per se. It's good if the matter has fully been completed, if it's concluded, that you are able to report the details of that conclusion easily. But those that are still running their course, I think it is important just to protect the rights of the entity, but also the rights of the individual affected parties in this regard. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you for clarity on that, DG. I quite agree. We have labor laws and all those things that we have to adhere to. So if I can go back to SET, all those reports that you spoke of that have been completed, if we can get some information on that. And then I would also like to know from you, you spoke about the SCMs and the National Treasury regulations that were not followed. If you could give us a report on how you're going to broach this aspect to ensure that SCMs and NT regulations are followed duly in the next 4.5 years, so that we don't see a repeat of that. And then we're looking forward to all the other reports that you have promised us, keeping in mind what the DG said. Thank you for that. Is there anything other from you, Ms. Guliwe, or the board chair?
Chairperson, nothing from my side. The CEO and the DG have covered everything. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and we wish you well, and we look forward to good engagements in the future, and we hope to see a turnaround within the next few months. If we put shoulder to the wheel, we are able to do so. Any questions from anybody else before we close the meeting? From the Secretariat, before I go to you, Mardia, Honorable Modise?
No, thanks, Chair. Mine is not a question to the officials from the department, but it's just a concern for us as a select committee. Chair, you see, we're supposed to hold the executive to account. And it's going to be difficult if the earlier statement that I think it was you or someone who said, unfortunately, Wednesday is a cabinet meeting, that we would be expected to meet on Wednesdays, and the excuse is that the minister or deputy minister will not be with us because of this or that. That will be very unfortunate. We need them in these meetings so that we can tell them exactly what we think. It's easy to talk to the officials in the department, but you and I know that officials, most of the time, they are permanent in their offices. So we can make noise all we want. In the next term, they'll see another portfolio committee members, and the next term, and so on and so forth. But ourselves and the politicians who are deployed into these ministries, who are there based on the will of the people. And it's easy for us to talk to them so that they can go and talk to the officials. So I'm asking, Chair, that you make it appeal to the powers that be, that whenever the portfolio committee sits, either the minister or the deputy minister, one of them must be in our meetings, so that we are able to raise our concerns and our frustrations with those that are deployed to take political direction in terms of how the department must function. Thank you so much, Chair.
Honorable Modise, I hear your sentiments. It's something that's been long coming, being a third returning member with regard to committee meetings taking place on a Wednesday. I will be sure to write to the minister to request that she make her deputy available and ensure that the deputy is not on a trip or an oversight on a Wednesday when we are to meet because of her absence due to her commitment to the committee. Mardia, is there anything from your side?
No, Chair. Nothing from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for allowing us to encroach on your lunch hour. The meeting is then adjourned.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Recording stopped.